WrestleMania 13. Whoo, doggy. Butter me up and call me Susan. This is a doozy of a show. A little dollop of new generation, little spritz of Attitude Era, an absolutely chaotic mixture. Of course, we have one of the most legendary matches of all time, but we also have one of the worst matches of all time. We also have Rikishi is here wearing a mask and curly shoes. This show has it all. The new Blackjacks are here. Strap in, strap on. Take a listen to the Apron Bump Podcast.
And the hardest, talk around and disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what heart is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can knock this. Let's get started.
What's up, everybody? Howdy. How is everybody doing? Welcome to the Apron Bump Podcast. I am your host, the hardest part of the ring, Kyle. How's everybody doing today? Hope everybody had a lovely turkey day, as they say. Or those in America. Hope so. If you live somewhere else, go fuck yourself, I guess. I don't know. No. Glad to have you all here from wherever you are. It's going to be a good one today. We got WrestleMania to talk about, everybody. WrestleMania 13, of course, from 1997. Very interesting year in wrestling. And I really think that kind of sets the tone for what this show was. Because we talk about a lot in this show. So I'm going to keep this short and sweet just to not be duplicative of anything. But a very interesting time in wrestling. But I think where we were as a society, where wrestling was, it just made this show. I had fun watching the show. I think a lot of people think that WrestleMania 13 is just the shits outside of Bret and Austin. But I don't know if that's necessarily true. I'm still trying to figure that out. But we get into that. Of course, we got Bret Hart versus Stone Cold Steve Austin. The match that made Stone Cold is here. We also got Undertaker and Sid in the main event, which is certainly a choice. A crazy street fight. We got Rocky Maivia in his first WrestleMania. Weird gimmicks. The new Blackjacks. The Godwins. I mean, it's just all gas, no brakes. This show. Let me tell you. But we have a fun time talking about it. Hey, if this is your first time tuning into the Apron Bump, first of all, hiya. How you doing? But if you like old school wrestling, you like this era of wrestling, perhaps. Maybe you like 1997, mid to late 90s wrestling, WWF, maybe even WCW and ECW. Well, let me tell you, I cover it all, folks. You can go to apronbump.com or you can go to the link in the description if you want to follow along this chronological timeline. I've covered every WWF, WCW, and ECW show starting mid 1994, working my way through 94, 95, 96, and where I'm at now in 1997, all chronologically. It has been a good old time. A lot of this stuff I'm watching for the first time, and it has been quite the journey. Also covered the golden era of TNA, the golden era of Ring of Honor, a little bit of independent wrestling, a little bit of ruthless aggression, attitude era. Every once in a while, I'll touch on the current product. If that sounds like something you'd like to jump on, well, I suggest you give the Apron Bump a follow, a subscribe, leave a comment if you're watching on YouTube, a like, leave a star rating, a review if you're listening on audio. How else would you listen, Kyle? But Apron Bump on all the social medias. Join the Discord. All of the info is in the description below. We have a good old time here, and I had a good old time with my lovely, lovely guest, Ibou of Wrestle Purists, joining the show today. It was a pleasure getting to talk to Ibou about some old school wrestling. You can follow Ibou, of course, on X at Backup Hangman. Check out the Wrestle Purists on YouTube. They get into all the wrestling, all the scuttlebutt of this crazy world of pro wrestling throughout the week. And they have a good old time doing it. They have a fun gang over there. Always an entertaining watch, an entertaining listen. So go do that. Give them a follow, give them a tickle on the cheek, and a finger in the belly button. Do all of those things. Do those to me as well. at the same time. And as of this episode dropping, Ibou will have made his debut for Fightful as well. So you can now check him out on Fightful and all of their various podcasts and other platforms. You know Fightful, you know the deal. One of the most respected brands in this weird little space we've crafted out in the wrestling community. So props to Ibou for that. So go check him out there, here, wherever. You know where to find him. And last thing, before we get into the episode, make sure you stick around to the end of the episode where the hardest promotion battle of 1997 continues, where we pit WWF against WCW and ECW. These three companies compete, and we see which company is doing the best at this point in time. So as of March of 1997, we see which company is currently doing the best. We look at the best, the worst, pay-per-views, TV, in-ring, out-of-ring. We cover it all. We'll grade the show. We'll do this all. There's points associated to it. So stick around to the end of the show. And whichever company wins the year of 1997, they will earn a purchase of a championship belt from yours truly. As you can see behind me, the old IC title belt from 96, because WWF was the hardest in 1996. So stick around for that, and stick around for this, won't you? WWF Wrestlemania 13 with myself and Ibou from Wrestle Purists and Fightful. Voice is all velvety and clear for all your praise of the Godwins. You know, we wouldn't want to miss anything.
Did you see my tweet a couple days ago?
Yeah, I mean, we'll get into it when we get into the match. I take umbrage to it a bit.
Really? Oh, interesting. Okay, cool.
I mean, I'm not a Godwin stan or anything, right? I'm not running around in overall.
What the fuck, dude? It's like,
yeah, I'm more of a Southern Justice guy myself, but
Southern Justice.
that's just, different strokes for different folks, as they say.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, you were saying before we hit record that WrestleMania 13 is probably all-time best WrestleMania of all time, top to bottom, just like all hits, no misses. So did you want to expand on that?
I definitely didn't say that.
I think you did. Yeah, I missed the recording, but yeah, you take my word for it, everybody.
I'll tell you what. I have slightly different feelings on the show this time.
Yeah.
And, it's weird because, the common popular take is that this is a one-match show.
Right.
And I wouldn't necessarily say that is incorrect.
Mm-hmm.
But for whatever reason, when I watched it this time around, I kind of still like the show in spite of that. It's weird. It's hard.
I kind of agree. Like first of all, this is my first time ever watching the show from top to bottom. Like
Wow.
I've seen Bret and Austin. It's been a while since I've watched that, but I've never seen the show from beginning to end. So there's a lot of stuff that I'm watching for the first time.
Mm.
And I've heard the same thing. Like this is a one match show, Bret and Austin, and a bunch of other bullshit. But
Right.
I'm watching this. I'm like, there's not a lot of bad on this show. There's some forgettable stuff, but there's some pretty good. Like the street fight is barring a few things.
It's a lot of fun.
Goldust Triple H is solid. Like even the tag team match is like par for the course. Like not a lot of terrible. I would say this is like up to this point, up to WrestleMania 13. I'd probably put this towards the top, maybe.
Oh, I see. I don't know about that.
Up to 13, so not including the ones after it.
For me, like, all right, let's go through it. Screw it. We have time.
Sure. Yeah, please.
I'm gonna list the manias that I think are good at this point. All right. So I think 3 is an awesome show.
Sure. Yeah. 3 is probably number 1.
Right. I think that Mania 7 is very solid.
7. Is that's not Sid and Hogan, is it?
No, that's 8.
Right.
The funny thing about 8 is that's the one in the Hoosier Dome. That show like the main event stinks. That show up until Flair and Savage is like pretty fantastic, honestly.
Yeah, that's a good point. You also got Piper Bret on there. Yeah, that's a pretty good one.
There. Yeah, like I think that's a good show. So I like 8, I like 7, I like 3. 9's terrible. 10 is a good show, mainly off the back of the 2 iconic Shawn Michaels and Razor and
right.
Owen, and then Bret wins the title at the end of the show. So 10's a good show. 11 isn't good.
No, that's an all-time worst, in my opinion.
12
11.
12 doesn't get talked about in general, and a lot of people don't love the Iron Man match, but I do like that show. So
I like the show. Shoot, so I think 13. So I've recently watched 10, 11, and 12. I think 13 is better than all of those.
Really?
Personally, I think definitely better than 11. 12, I agree. 12 is pretty solid. Like the Piper Goldust stuff, I think is pretty fun.
It's fun, yeah.
It's paced very well. I just think this show had more to offer than 12 and 10. Obviously, great ladder match, but really nothing else beyond that. I mean, I don't know.
Owen and Bret Hart in the opener, you know?
Yeah. God damn it, you make a good point. Well, this is actually here's another question. In terms of all 40 WrestleManias that have happened up to this point, where do you even just ballpark? Where do you throw 13? Is it bottom? Is it top 30? Is it number 40? Not number 40, but is it bottom half, top half?
It's vaguely, I'd say it's the 25th best Mania, something like that.
Somewhere in the middle. Yeah.
Something like that, yeah. I'll say this though about the show up until this point, and in general, even to this point now, there's a match on here that you and I probably both agree is one of the best matches in the history of WrestleMania, and one of the best matches in the history of the entire promotion.
Sultan, Rocky Maivia, totally agree.
Absolutely. That match, I mean, the way the Sultan just kind of played that gimmick. Did you know that Sabu was supposed to be the Sultan?
I did not.
Yeah, you see, Kyle, I'm a professional, and so
you went to the archives and flipped through all the pages. Who was supposed to be the Sultan?
Brother, you gave me this job. You tasked me. You're like, hey man,
sure did.
You were like, hey man, I'd love for you to join and watch WrestleMania 13. And because I'm a pro, right? My initial reaction is Mania 13. But it's you know what? If I'm going to do this, I got to commit to it. I got to do it right. So I took notes. I watched the show again, and I did research. I looked through some old PW torches. I looked through some old Wrestling Observers. Did a little quick Wikipedia scrolls, cage match, all of that stuff. I even looked at some of the TV angles leading to the show.
Oh,
and one of the fun things that I came across was that Sabu was supposed to be the Sultan. And hilariously, with all this said, I don't remember what the reason was. I'm forgetting and blanking now why he couldn't be the Sultan. But it's because of the manager. He wanted the original Sheik to manage him, and they said it was going to be Iron Sheik, and he just wasn't down with the vision for it, and so he stayed in Philadelphia, I guess.
I just love the idea that they went out and got these Sheik pants and the whole garb and the mask, and then Sabu's like, nah, and then they're just like, what are we going to do with these fluffy pants and ridiculous mask and curly shoes? Throw it on Make a Difference Fatu. He'll make something of it.
It's funny because usually when Vince has a vision for a character like that, they're usually in a certain mold. And if he can't get one guy to play it, he'll just get another guy who's similar in build or shape to play it. So it's just funny that they were going to do it with Sabu, and they said, no, we'll just do this big Samoan dude instead, who's totally, who's just built completely differently.
Right. He's vaguely brown. He'll fit the mold.
Right. It's funny because he was Make a Difference Fatu right before this, and I've actually not seen any of that.
There's not a ton, but I think it's in your house. It's either in your house 4 or 5, where he has a match against Triple H. That's actually really good. Well, really good is probably too much. It's pretty good.
Right.
I think it's worth, if you stumble upon it, maybe keep watching it. But
it's neat, It happens to me sometimes too. I'm like, yeah, man, this thing fucking ruled. And it was cool,
Let's reel it back a little bit. But yeah, we'll dig into that, I'm sure. But might as well just hop into this bad boy because there's a lot of meat on the bone, I think.
It's funny, you did a seamless transition there, brother, because
I'm a pro too. Look, pros here.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm on the apron bump, folks.
Finally. You've been asking me for years, and I've been I don't have time for you, Ibou. Finally,
I've been shaking the door. It's locked. I'm banging on it. I'm asking. I've sent.
There's holes on that door. You see? I mean, it's crazy.
Eventually, you finally let me in. The janitor saw me, and I kind of stumbled.
Right.
And I was like, just give me a chance, dude.
You offered me some Parmesan wings, and I was like, I don't think so, Tim. And but we figured it out. Glad to be here.
Yeah, for sure.
man, WrestleMania 13 heat. It just opens up with I do like the packages from this era.
Tremendous. With the
Dude,
narration about like
it's so dramatic.
yeah, like I wish I wrote down the verbiage, but 97, 96, 97, early 98 was the era of these WWF packages with the narration and like the way they just narratively frame what's happening with the promotion at large is so great. And we transitioned in the next couple years after that to more so just kind of like a package that just shows what's happening with like some rock music, right? And that rocks too. And like there's a whole generation of WWF fans or WWE fans that are raised off that, which is like that, like, you know, vaguely like late Attitude Era, Ruthless Aggression era, rock music, and you just see the package of the guys and like that's the thing, right? And that's awesome. But the period before, like 96 to early 98, where it'll just be this guy like, the moral fiber of society is crumbling at large. There are heroes and villains, and
that's exactly what it is. I wrote down a quote because it just it popped me for whatever reason. A tempest engulfs utopia, which is like who says that?
It's like you're reading like an old Marvel comic or something, man, and like it's just so sick because they'll be like, the WWF is overrun by villains and anarchists or whatever, and you'll see like DOA or some shit, or like,
right? Chains is here. It's like, all right, let's settle down on the utopia. But yeah, no, it's getting forward the message that this is kind of like a darker, more grungier era, which is where we're heading towards the Attitude Era. So it all thematically makes sense, and it's kind of this WrestleMania is more based on like the blood feuds and the violence more than like the pageantry and the celebration of previous years. So I do like how they set it up,
which is
as
why,
corny as it is.
Which is why it fits being in Chicago, you know, because Chicago, I mean, you know, this is like a hardcore fan stronghold, and it's a gritty town, and this is where the Road Warriors are from, and you know, like
Legion of Doom,
yeah, right, the LOD, you know, but
2000.
Right, but like that's the thing. You're in Chicago. Society's changing. The WWF is changing. Now is not the time for, you know, like the pageantry, like you said. There's nothing to celebrate here. We're about to watch men go to war. We're seeing the moral fiber of the WWF as a promotion crumble, and we're also seeing the fans take to that in ways that are unprecedented because it's not how they took to it just a couple years prior. Because the truth is, if the WWF is going to have to resonate with the youth of 1997, they're going to have to follow what they want. And so they're putting on a product that is right before our eyes with this very show. It's a snapshot of how things were changing in some places and not changing in other places. And it was very clear to see what was resonating with the fans and what was not. And so it was interesting to see. I love going back and watching old wrestling because you always get a snapshot of just like the zeitgeist of the time and the cultural snapshot of things. And it's always so fascinating because, like I said, there were things on this show that worked big with these fans. And there were things on this show that the crowd, like they didn't give, like they didn't care about, you know? And it's just fascinating because like, it's one thing to watch 98, 99 and you're firmly entrenched in the Attitude Era and it's established what it is. But sometimes it's more interesting for me to watch this transition year where you're seeing some things unfold before your eyes. You know, that's where like some of the most interesting stuff comes from. So from that standpoint, this show was extremely interesting viewing because, like, for example, again, Chicago is a hardcore fan stronghold, and I'm not saying everybody in this venue is tapped in with like ECW, for example, but I'd imagine a number of them are, and so. Like if a wrestler did a cool move that you typically would only see in wrestling's underground or like maybe overseas, if it happened on this show, like a guy doing a dive or something or a spinning heel kick or a missile drive, whatever, the crowd would get into that. If a guy, you know, was teasing breaking a table or something, they got into that, you know, or plunder, like as we saw with the street fight. And then obviously like Steve, just everything about Steve Austin. So I loved that whole aspect of this show from that standpoint, just observing that. And I don't know if you knew this, Kyle. I did a WrestleMania review series a couple years ago.
Yes.
And watching the shows in order was great because once you get to 95, the WWF is firmly like not cool.
Right.
It's just not cool. And it's very clear that they're not in touch with like young people. And it's not a product that like a 14, 15-year-old can resonate with and like be proud of or brag about to their friends, you know? And so there's a disconnect from that standpoint. You get now to this year and you feel the beginnings of the WWF becoming cool again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the transition era, like you said, is very interesting. I compare it to like 2002 is kind of a similar thing, or attitude to ruthless aggression. And like 97, you still have like the hokey characters like the Sultan, like we talked about, the Godwins, but you also have the hyper like realistic stuff and Bret and Austin, and then Undertaker's around. So it's like a weird mish. It's like the transition. It's like some things are working, like you said, and some things aren't. And then it's on a show like this, it's very clear what's working and what isn't. And it's a very interesting time in wrestling, like you mentioned, 97. I mean, ECW's cooking. We're only a few weeks away from their first ever pay-per-view. And Barely Legal's coming up in a few weeks, and they just did their invasion of Raw, which I just watched for the first time, which was it feels like a fever dream seeing Sandman on Raw. Like,
it's insane. It's insane. Yeah.
I feel like this doesn't get brought up a lot. It's crazy what they were doing. But
it's just fascinating because a lot of that stuff is stuff that like Vince typically wouldn't do with his promotion. And a lot of what's happening within the company at this point is against tradition. But when you're in a war, a wrestling war, and you're on the losing end and your promotion is really, really cold, you have to then buck tradition and try different things. And obviously these are like cliches that are said in every WWE documentary about the Monday Night Wars. You know, there's always a talking head or like The Miz or something like, and that's why you gotta try new things. Or Bruce Pritchard being like, Vince said it was time for a change. Like,
no, The Rock, I think, actually said that he was watching what WCW was doing, and he went up the brass and was like, "Hey, Rocky Maivia with his tassels was like, hey, we should start using blood." And
it's always a new guy in the newest documentary that has to be the one to go. And that's when I told Vince, like, what they're doing is working, you know. And like it's either him, it's Russo, who's like, I was in a creative meeting, bro, and I told him, our show is boring. It's lame, bro. Like, it's always somebody, but it's true. Like, inviting ECW over to do ECW shit on Raw is something Vince would have never signed off on a couple of years ago. He would have turned his nose up at it. And obviously when the company got hot, and even afterwards when they were stable, they wouldn't, like, in 2004, they wouldn't invite Ring of Honor over to Raw. Like, you know what I mean? But in 97, again, early 97, they're getting the shit kicked out of them. Getting the shit kicked out of the houses are down.
NWO is hot, ECW is hot, and I'm watching all this. I'm watching WCW and ECW chronologically along, like all in one timeline. So I'm seeing firsthand, like, you see all the BWO shirts in the crowd, by the way, on WrestleMania. That's hot. NWO is obviously hot. So, like you mentioned, WWF is kind of, they gotta shit or get off the pot and do something different, and we're seeing the beginning stages here. For sure. So that is very interesting. We're also, Raw is War just started like 2 weeks before this, which it's rich aesthetic, it's different music and stuff, but it just feels different, like the Raws and the attitude. We're not quite attitude era yet, but there's definitely tastes. We're dipping our toes in the water a little bit, and you can like we have mentioned, there's tastes of it on this show, but still a little bit of the hokey stuff.
The transition wasn't even fully done because the first like month of Raw's War, the ring ropes are still red, white, and blue, which are the traditional WWF colors. And then in like mid-April, they finally switched to red. And that's when pretty much you get the Attitude Era aesthetic for the TV, even though they still kept that like blocky logo of the WWF that they had.
Right.
Until like, I want to say November, December of 97. That's when they get the scratch logo. But yeah.
Right. It's bizarre to see. It's like when you see pictures of Earthquake with the SmackDown fist in the background, like doing dark matches. Like, it doesn't feel like these are the right timelines, but it happened.
You know, it's another one like that. I want to say it was the Raw after the 02 draft. They got the ruthless aggression aesthetic where with like the the move to the music, like that theme,
and the screens and the
And the WWF logo is still there because they would keep
Right.
it because they didn't change their name for another 3 weeks, roughly 2-3 weeks. And
Mm-hmm.
so for a couple weeks there, it's early Ruthless Aggression era, and you have the aesthetic of on SmackDown, it's the Fist, of course, and on Raw, it's like the Raw aesthetic that you'd keep until 06. And yet, it's the WWF logo, and that always just like trips me out. It's like, oh,
Right.
Yeah.
Like, doesn't make sense. But
No.
I mean, a good representation of things that just a weird mosh of eras and just styles is represented by this opening tag team match here for, I guess, the number one contendership for the tag team titles currently held by Owen and Bulldog, which we'll get into later. We got the team of Doug Furnas and Philip LaFawn taking on the Godwins, taking on the Headbangers versus the new Blackjacks. Of course, Blackjack Bradshaw, Blackjack Wyndham. I'm gonna tell you this right now. I kind of like the new Blackjacks.
They popped the shit out of me when they popped up. So I forgot this team existed. I was aware of the new Blackjacks, but I totally forgot they existed, right? So I turned this thing on, and I'm like, "Is that Barry Windham?" And I'm like, howling with laughter. I'm just howling with laughter. I'm like, "What are you guys doing here? You guys should be in like All Japan working fucking Misawa and Jun Akiyama or something."
Right.
But but they're here in this 4-way tag, which was elimination, and it's funny because this match starts. I'm like, could this be good? I don't like two of these teams. And then like the Furnas and LaFawn are in there. You know, the Can-Am Express. I don't remember if they called them that in WWE, but
I don't remember now.
It's funny, Kyle, because I was just watching these two guys a couple days ago. I was watching them 1989 facing Dynamite Kid and British Bulldog. And that match fucking rocked. It's awesome. Can-Am Express are great. They're a great team, right? And I was actually just telling my friend about how, like, for those who don't know, like the Can-Am Express, these guys, I mean, they were an All Japan, reliable All Japan Gaijin team, you know, from the late 80s and early to mid 90s. Paul Heyman brought them over in 96. You know, these guys worked extensively with Rob Van Dam in Japan. And when Heyman brought them over, he also brought RVD back over. This is like 96. Vince McMahon likes what he sees from Furnas and LaFawn, and he brings them over to the WWF in late 96. And their run was pretty unspectacular in WWE, and they didn't get over. They struggled to get over. They just kind of were caught in the wrong time, in my opinion, in terms of like,
right.
Like they're just kind of like a workers like team, you know, and it's like they just didn't fit. But I say all that to say they're in this match, and I'm already in a Furnas and LaFawn mood. So I'm like, all right, this might be sick. Let's go. You know,
right?
They get eliminated in like 4 minutes, and I'm like, damn
by count out or DQ. It's not really clear.
Yeah. And then the other team I was kind of into were the new Blackjacks. I'm like, all right, let's see these guys mix it up a little bit. You know,
the Blackjacks, right again. It's like, shut up, Bradshaw.
And then so they're both eliminated, and I'm like, all right, so what do we got here? And it's the Headbangers, and it's the Godwins.
Your favorite tag team, the Godwins.
I'm like, God damn it. and guess what? Judging by the lack of crowd heat, the crowd also was like, God damn it, because they didn't know what to make of this. They just kind of sat there and watched, and every so often one of the Headbanger guys would do a kind of a really ambitious move, like a dive or something off the top. And then the crowd would basically go, "Oh, that was kind of cool. Oh shit," you know, and like
they popped for the finish, which I was kind of surprised. Like you said, it was kind of flat throughout the match, which, given where the tag team division is and pretty much always is in WWE, like you could blame them. I mean, the Headbangers are pretty new, by the way. They haven't really. They're still kind of the crowd's still kind of seeing what is this team? Do we like them? Do we not like them? It's not really clear if they're heel or face or whatever. But same with the new Blackjacks and Godwin's have been around for a while. They've just kind of been spinning their wheels for a bit. And like you said, Furnas, LaFawn, not a lot to grab onto.
The Godwins lasting deep into 97 blows my mind.
It's crazy. Like why?
Yeah, it's just insane to me.
Who's asking for the Godwins?
The team where their initials were Pig and Hog, and like
that's pretty clever though. You can't say it's not clever.
It's just like
they're farmers.
It's just funny because like they're so 95. How are they still here? You know?
Perfect for 95. Yeah, the hog pen match, which is kind of good actually. I don't know if you've seen that recently. It's kind of fun. But after that, yeah, they kind of just middling, doing stupid shit with Sunny and dropping buckets of slop and cum or whatever was in that bucket onto her, and just so weird chronicles of the Godwins. Just a weird career. And then there's Southern Justice and then Naked Midian. It's a whole thing.
Naked Midian is something.
the peaks and valleys of a career
of the God.
Yeah, not a ton to say about this match. Like you said, the Blackjacks and Can-Am eliminate each other by just brawling on the outside, and they both get DQ'd. With the Blackjack, I did like this part where Bradshaw tags in, I think is it Thrasher, I believe? No, he tags in Pig. He tags in Phineas O'Godwin. He tags him in, Phineas gets in, and then Bradshaw just clobbers him. Like, he just tagged him in, but why wouldn't he clobber him, I guess, if he's right in front of him? It was just very, like, rough around the edges, this match was, and, which, I'm all for, battering and, like, a little rough, a little not so perfect, but, this match is pretty forgettable. Ultimately, Mosh gets the win with his flying cock, or whatever he calls that move. Stage dive, is that what it is?
I didn't write it down, but I did notice that it was kind of a flying cock, and he just kind of won with it.
I mean, I've never seen it. Could be devastating. Who knows?
Pretty cool move. I can't lie.
Yeah, not too bad. I mean, it makes sense with the gimmick, I guess. They're jumping around, hitting each other's asses. It's fun. It's fun.
Sure.
But the crowd erupts when Mosh gets the pin. Maybe it's because it's over. Maybe that's because they're just excited that it's over.
It's because I'm telling you, it was because it was a cool move.
Yeah.
Unique. The crowd got into any type of like innovative move done on this show.
Were there any innovative moves that caught your eye in this one?
In this match?
Yeah.
Wasn't there like a dive to the outside? I'm pretty sure there was like a dive to the outside by one of the headbangers.
Probably. There was one part where Bradshaw suplexes who is he? He suplexes somebody to the outside and then ends up giving him a fucking brain buster on the floor. It looked really gnarly. But that's kind of representative of what this match was, I guess. I do got a comment on a commentary note. There's one point where Mosh and Phineas spit on each other.
Oh.
And then Vince McMahon on commentary says, "Oh, the headbangers are used to that." And then I believe is it King? He's like, "Yeah, I think Phineas is used to that too. Who knows what he does with those farm animals?" So bestiality, I think, is what we're referencing here. So.
There's so many little things like that on commentary. I did take note that I've never been a fan of Vince McMahon's commentary.
No, yeah.
But he was much more stripped back by this time, because in like 94, 95, he was totally in full just oh my god,
right.
Like
he loved it.
He either did that voice where it just sounds like he sucked in a lot of wind and won't let it out, and so he's just kind of like what it's either that or he's doing like the look at Shawn Michaels,
the most flamboyant.
Shawn starts wiggling his ass and he's like, oh yeah, so like, look at Shawn.
Can you blame him?
I guess not, but like so. But here he's closer to just speaking in his normal voice than doing all that stuff, and so he's a bit better at and more bearable by this time.
Right. Yeah. At this point, JR is a regular. King's obviously a regular, so yeah, he's kind of stepping back and letting them get their shine in, I guess, on commentary for the better, for sure. But speaking of wiggling hips, what are your thoughts on the Honky Tonk Man?
He's a honky tonk man.
That's actually a good point. I never really thought about that.
Nah, I don't really like the Honky Tonk Man, but he was a good heel. And I guess that's the point, in the sense that, like, anytime I happen to see him, I kind of want to just see someone like do a move to him. And here he's just on commentary, and it's like, all right, I guess, cool. Honky Tonk Man is here.
I guess. I mean, he's still searching for a guy to manage. We're not quite at Rockabilly yet, but I guess he's scouting Rocky Maivia and Sultan here, or maybe it's just because it's an IC title match. Maybe that's why he's out here. I don't know.
And then we had ringside my boy Tony Atlas, who was just kind of hanging out, and I guess he had to take a break from his daily activity of just letting women step on him. But yeah,
you think he was doing it back then too?
Probably.
I guess you don't just like pick it up later in life.
No, he probably was like somaed up, and then was just kind of like, well, why don't you step on me and see what happens?
Might as well.
Yeah, and it's funny because my notes say basically that Jim Johnston is awesome because he was a monster at this time. This might be the peak of Jim Johnston. Like this, every song just fucking bangs, and Rock's theme were just like boom, 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 boom. Duh,
it's good.
Duh, it's good. Duh, it's a good.
Because it's not the one he came out to at his debut, right? It's a different one because that one was a little bit more dancey and a little more like disco almost. Whereas this one's like almost like the Rock theme song that he would be known for.
Yeah,
like it's just a little bit different.
It is hilarious that Rock has been on the roster for 4 months at this point, and fans have already decided this guy fucking sucks. like in my mind, I don't know why. In my mind, I always say that like they gave Rocky Maivia more of a chance before they turned on him. That's very not true. They decided pretty quickly on like this guy fucking stinks and we hate him. And
see, I didn't really get. I wasn't. Maybe I just didn't notice. I didn't notice really many boos for Rocky.
Oh no, dude! There was Rocky sucks chance like halfway through, and there was a Die Rocky sign in the crowd right on the hard cam.
But were they talking about Rocky Johnson?
Who knows? I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
It's funny because the Rocky Maivia gimmick does stink, and like it makes sense why fans hate on him, and like it very much was just like not representative of what fans wanted at the time and all that stuff. So I get why the fans hated on him. But the hilarious part about it is I watched him work and I'm like, man, this kid could fucking go. He had so much natural ability and charisma and talent, and his natural babyface fire that's old school where he just kind of like bobbles his head and kind of gets his fist ready. He's just kind of like, come on,
Hulk up.
Yeah. And like that little like kind of like shimmy dance thing before he does his little punch, that
Shane McMahon,
that whole thing. Exactly. I'm doing it right now.
Not the Muhammad Ali, the Shane McMahon.
Right. It just he really was like the way they pumped him up, and Jim Ross going, "Oh, that's Blue Chipper. That kid's gonna be the future." Like
6'2", 280.
6'2", 280. Oh my God, Rocket John. Like he's right. Like this kid was he was a blue chipper. Like if I went down to like the wrestling school and I'm watching this kid just bumping and like feeding and doing stuff and doing that little crossbody, and I'm Jim Ross scouting and talking and working in talent relations, I'd be telling the office, I'm like, man, this kid's awesome. Hell yeah, bring him up. He's like 24, 25. So that's the thing about it is they were like hyping the shit out of him and like all this stuff and giving him the big rollout. And the truth is, it was justified in like believing what they believed in him. The problem was just the packaging and presentation. And I mean, how many times do we hear that in wrestling? The bottom line with wrestling is like, it's all about how you present a guy, and they presented him like a total fucking geek. And he was a character that wouldn't resonate with anyone. He had that shitty poofy hair,
He was Rocky Johnson's son. That was the extent of his character.
Right.
To your point, not much to like really grab onto outside of that. He's not had a lot of mic time at this point, which come to find out that's like his bread and butter. That's like what makes him the Rock. So he's just, but his in-ring stuff, like you said, it looks good. He's a big guy, which is like honestly kind of my main issue among other ones with this match is that like they're portraying the Sultan as this like monster, this unbeatable monster, which by the way, he's only been around for a few weeks. It's not like he's had any like big wins or like any reason to fear him. Yeah. No, he's just a foreign guy, a Samoan Iranian guy. And they like face off in the ring and you're like, oh, The Rock is bigger than this guy, I think. But they're like still commentary is really hyping it up like Rocky's got an uphill battle. There's no way he's gonna defend the IC, but it's for the IC title. But yeah, it's just the way this match was framed. It was like at no point did I think The Rock was in peril from stupid Rikishi and his curly shoes doing. I mean, I would say the Big Quiche, Sultan here, some of his offense looked pretty good. That flying headbutt, the flying splash, the pile drivers, like there's something there.
Listen, man, he's always been a good worker, and he had been in the company for years. I mean, he was part of the Head Shrinkers, and prior to that, the Samoan SWAT team in WCW. He's been at this point. He's been in the game for quite some time, and he could work and he can go. And so what you see here, Kyle, is a match between two wrestlers that are quite good, both in really shitty gimmicks that aren't built to last or built to get over, in a match that isn't over. And so that's what you get. You get guys that fundamentally, mechanically can work, just having a match that nobody cares about.
Right. I think maybe Sultan needs to run over somebody and do it for Rocky Maivia. I think that would actually probably get him over.
Yeah, he needs to. Well, before that, I think he needs to kind of expose his butt cheeks and dance with two white guys in like these kind of cool outfits.
You know, it's interesting you bring up the butt cheeks because I was watching this and I don't know if it's just the pants. Doesn't seem like he's packing that much. I mean, more than most. More than the general populace, but I don't think he's ready for an ass-based gimmick at this point.
No, not yet. I think he's got some McDonald's to eat, some more preparation to do, and maybe after some time, we can get to that point. He doesn't. His ass is big for like 90 standards. It's not like 2010's Instagram model ass. It's not that.
Right. I'm with you. Well, anyways, some wrestling happens here, I think, and
it's okay.
It's a standard match, nothing to sneeze at, but also nothing like offensively bad. Like it was a fine match, Sultan gets his heat in, and Rocky hulks up, like we said, does the whole sting like a butterfly or whatever the hell, and ends up winning with a schoolboy. Rocky does. So he retains his IC title, but we are not done here. By the way, I think the match is really just here as a way to set up the post match, which is like the real story here. And like we mentioned, Rocky Maivia, he's here. His whole character is that he's a third generation guy. So after the match, Sultan attacks after the bell, belt shots with the title, big flying splash off the top rope. We haven't even dug into the Iron Sheik and Bob Backlund as the managers of the Sultan.
This whole act is very odd. It's so ill-conceived to me. It's just a weird act.
And I'm watching the Raws leading up to this, and there's no reason for Bob Backlund and Iron Sheik to be together, much less where did they find the Sultan?
After the 80s, they just like to call Bob Backlund every couple of years to just do something, and they don't really know what. And they're like, "Hey, you want to win the WWF Championship and feud with Bret?" And they're like, "Oh, sure." You want to just manage? Do you want to do this? And then 2016, you want to manage Darren Young and say make Darren Young great again? Like it's very. The usage of Bob Backlund over the last 30 years is fascinating.
Dude, I cover a lot of timelines here on the Apron Bump, and one of which is mid-2000s TNA.
Oh.
And boy, howdy, am I balls deep into Bob Backlund's run. His match with Alex Shelley. He had a match with Alex Shelley on a pay-per-view, which is
was it any good?
It was like 2 minutes. He was 2 minutes, and Bob Backlund rolled up Shelley and got the win. So it wasn't much to. It's a funny sight to watch. Like if you stumble upon it. 2007.
He's probably still wearing his fucking like old school like 1980 gear, isn't he?
Yeah, he's got like the. Did he have trunks or shorts? I think he had red shorts on. I mean, he looked the same. His physique looked the same because he's an animal. But yeah, it was just interesting. But yeah, Bob Backlund's here for whatever reason. I guess he's done running for president because he was doing that for whatever reason. And so Sheik is also here, Iron Sheik, and he puts on the combo clutch onto Rocky Maivia, and who makes the save? None other than Soul Man Rocky Johnson. Screams in there, just knocking everybody down, laying everybody out until Sultan with an Iranian flag to the back of Rocky Johnson. Just reading this is like, did this actually happen? Then Rocky fights back, knocks them all out of the ring. Rocky, both with scoop slams to the Iron Sheik, and we're left with the imagery that I feel like this whole build and match was set up for. It was for Rocky Maivia and Rocky Johnson to be in the ring together, and it's a cool moment, I guess, but the crowd, I don't think, was very receptive to it.
Yeah, it was cool. Like I kind of popped for this. I was like, man, this is a really nice father-son moment.
Sure.
I got the feeling that like a good amount of these fans didn't know who Rocky Johnson was. And so like it meant nothing to them. So that's one thing. The other thing is it just feels like this is one of those out of touch moments. I feel like, and a lot of this angle was built for like USA chants and things like that. And I just feel like young people in 97 don't give a fuck. Like it just felt like this is the type of thing that would have hit big in the 80s. And in 97, like the guy with the Iranian flag beating up a dude with the Iranian flag, and then like the guy, you know, the heroes, the American heroes are like going to fight them off. It just, I feel like this fan, if you ask them, they would just say like, I just want to see people like fight and bleed and like break things, dude. I don't really give a fuck, you know?
Right. Well, they get that later in the show. A little bit of that, I would say.
Absolutely.
Well, that's where we're at with old Rocky and Sultan. We'll see what comes of that. But speaking of people fighting, we got old Todd Pettengill backstage with old Ken Shamrock.
Yeah.
The UFC crossover 25 years before TKO, which is very interesting to see here.
Ken Shamrock of the Ultimate Fighting Championship.
UFC, because were they wearing gloves at this point in UFC? I think they were, right?
I don't
know.
97?
I think I'll look it up later. I know, like at first it was just like, here's a sumo wrestler, here's a karate guy, get in there and kill each other.
Right,
there was really no structure to it.
Completely deregulated, you know. But
yeah, it's still a little underground at this point, but I think it's a little bit more sports based at this point in 97. But he's here obviously to be the special guest ref for Bret and Austin later in the show. We're just a few weeks into Ken Shamrock showing up for the first time on Raw. I believe it was the week before this is when him and Billy Gunn squared up, and Shamrock just locks him in a Fujiwara armbar, then an ankle lock, and just makes him look like a geek. The Shamrock's a beast, man. Where do you stand on the Shamrock?
I think he's a bad motherfucker. I'm a big Ken Shamrock guy. I liked him as a kid. I love him now. I don't think he's a great pro wrestler, but I think he just rules. And he has tremendous fire, and he's a badass. And in some ways, stylistically, he's a little earlier than I don't think wrestling fans were adjusted enough to like get him fully, but they still got into him because at the end of the day, he does have the physical charisma. Like it's just this guy with pulsating muscles just fucking screaming in the air and after doing moves. He'll do a belly to belly and just be like, and do like an ankle lock. So I'm a fan of Ken Shamrock. I like Ken Shamrock. He didn't reach his full potential in the WWF, unfortunately. I don't know why they didn't do a main event program with him as a heel versus Steve Austin in '98 when they could have. I think he's awesome. And I have some more trivia for the audience. So,
oh boy,
this isn't like a super underground story, but you know, some people might not be aware of it. But Ken Shamrock, he obviously was a shooter. He was a guy that was doing MMA, but he also was active in Japan in Pancrase, you know, and so he was doing a lot of like shoot style promotions in Japan where basically it's like worked MMA, you know, and so like it's kind of the early burgeonings of that style. And it's because of that like he was able to transition into pro wrestling pretty easily because he didn't change much about what he did anyway. Like in WWE, like he's just kind of doing like worked MMA a little bit, but it kind of like, you know, he's still doing like some traditional pro wrestling stuff, shooting guys off the ropes, drop downs, that type of thing. But anyway, the point is, early 97, he was locked into working New Japan Pro Wrestling. And he was scheduled to feud with their top champion, Shinya Hashimoto. And they're going to do this big angle. And Hashimoto was like the biggest badass in New Japan. He was going to work with him. It was going to be this big thing, this big box office thing, like, oh, this fucking American shooter versus Hashimoto. Who's tougher? Who's stronger? And they're going to do their big match in April. And then out of nowhere, Vince McMahon and the WWF swoop in. And they're like, hey, man, you know, you're a big badass. Why don't you do this thing for WrestleMania? And they came up with that idea. And so that nixed that. And they had to replace him in Japan with a man by the name of Naoya Ogawa. But in the case of Shamrock, he was going to be like the most pushed fucking Gaijin badass dude over there. And his whole career was going to go in a totally different direction. And just from this Mania offer, it totally changes the trajectory of his career. And the rest is what the rest ended up being, with him being a WWF wrestler for 2 years. And it kind of going well, but like not quite as well as maybe one would hope. And then him going back to UFC.
Interesting. Yeah, I wasn't really familiar of his like, you know, pseudo wrestling career beforehand.
Yeah,
I thought he just was straight out of the cage into the WrestleMania. So that's very interesting. Yeah, it makes sense.
He did a lot of pseudo wrestling. Yeah, just because that's the thing. Like in the mid 90s was big in Japan for a lot of, because again, we didn't have organized mixed martial arts, you know, so it's like a lot of these guys who have like backgrounds in like judo and, you know, other types of just like combat sports. it's like, what do you do when you if you want to make some money? And
Right.
you got Japanese promoters like, hey, you want to do this shit but like fake and make money and work these people, and they're like, yeah, let's do it. So a lot of those guys were doing a lot of like worked MMA and like kind of in Japanese shoot style promotions, and he was among the people that kind of got the call, like, hey man, we need, because one of the big parts of Japan's business is we need foreigners. We need foreigners to be the bad guys and come in and be the guy walking in. And in many cases, hilariously, because this is the awesome part of not being in the internet age, is you can just make up lore for people. So like Ben Shamrock could walk in and they could say he's this 70-0 fighter in America. Like he's killed a guy with his bare hands and he's done this and he's done that. What is Minoru Suzuki gonna do with him? Like they could just promote it like that. And so he knows show business. He's been in the fight business. He's been in the wrestling business, so to speak. So like I say all that to say, I think that's really why he was able to get WWF and understand it. Because he's like, oh, they're paying me to be a badass and be the enforcer here, and then I'm going to transition to being a wrestler, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be the badass that just fights people. So like he's able to get it, Yeah,
it's very evident when you compare him to somebody like Dan Severn,
who
did not get it as much. But Shamrock just had that charisma that like not all MMA fighters have. It's just natural charisma. Not even necessarily. He's not bad on the mic, but just the way he carries himself, he's just hilariously jacked. I mean, lots of Ico Pro in that man's veins, let me tell you. So
Ico Pro.
It's all Ico Pro, man. That's all it takes. That's all it takes. Nothing else. Absolutely nothing else.
No, just Ico Pro.
Yeah. Well, after that, we got Doc Hendricks backstage with Triple H and a newly debuted China. And Doc's probing. He's like, well, what's the relationship between you two? And Hunter Hearst Helmsley's like, it's none of your business. He's still like, he doesn't really have the accent anymore, but he's still kind of transitioning off of the Blue Bloods, whatever the hell.
Right. He has the name and the gear and stuff, but like he's also
the music rules.
Yeah. But he's also with China now, and it's like, that 97 Triple H is so weird for that because they call him Hunter Hearst Helmsley and he's dressed like that, but it's like throughout the year he just kind of is more of himself,
Right. Yeah, this is pretty much just Triple H in the Hunter Hearst Helmsley aesthetic for the most part. Almost at DX, not quite at DX yet, but we're working our way there. We got China as the muscle.
Yeah, we got about 5 more months of that before.
Yeah. Got Rick Rude needs to come in, all that stuff. But China's here. I mean, I kind of dig the dynamic with China as the manager. It's a very unique thing, especially for the time. I mean, she's menacing looking, if nothing else. And then, I don't know, what do you think about China's dynamic here and how she fit in?
Just a deeply fascinating presence. And I get why they just were like enamored with her and like, we got to like do something with this lady. And almost menacing. This is before China like spoke at all and before China had matches. She's just this muscular lady who looks like no one else on the planet. And she's just out there with Triple H. They're super vague about what the nature of their relationship even is at this point. And it's just really fascinating. It kind of reminds me, this is such a random comparison. But in 2019, NWA, Nick Aldis was paired with Camille. And it was a very similar thing where Camille would just kind of like, she would just kind of fold her arms and look at the camera and be very intimidating and be dead silent and stoic. And the interview's like, so what's the deal with Camille, Mr. Aldis? Like, is she like a cohort? Is she a manager? Are you in a romantic relationship? And he would just be like, don't worry about it. And so that was clearly like taken from Hunter and China here. And I think the dynamic's interesting. I think she's probably the most interesting thing about this act at this point in time. And like pretty easily actually. And because otherwise it's just a gimmick that like is kind of fizzling anyway. And Hunter is like a fine worker. And
well, you may say it's fizzling, but commentary reminds us that he won the Slammy Award for Best Hair Day. Which I don't know if I agree with that necessarily. I don't know who I would throw at Best Hair Day. I feel like it can't be Triple H right here, no?
His hair is like really normal. I don't get it.
Yeah, it's just blonde and fluffy. I don't know. Yeah. We'll have to review the ballots and see if there's any shenanigans afoot with that one.
It's not Rocky Maivia. Or maybe it is. I don't know.
No, yeah, maybe Hawk. Who knows? We'll have to, like I said,
Hawk's hair is awesome. Yeah,
maybe a recount is needed for this one, but
I guess. Yeah.
we got Hunter Hearst Helmsley taking on a Goldust in this next matchup. Of course, China with Hunter, Marlena with Goldust, which this story is almost more like the foundation of it is more based on China versus Marlena. China broke Marlena's ribs with a bear hug on Raw a few weeks ago, and now she's back. And then don't know, man, don't know. But I mean, the match itself, it was fine. Like I actually really enjoyed like the physical chemistry these guys had with each other. I mean, we're still at a point where Hunter is bumping his ass off in there, and Goldust is solid as all hell. So the Goldust character I always enjoyed. I thought it was pretty cool, especially like in this era. I think it's pretty cool. Other than that, nothing too striking in this match. Anything about this one catch your eye in particular?
I think this is probably the least interesting thing on the show in terms of because there's just not much to say about it.
Yeah.
Dustin Rhodes, the man behind Goldust, is immensely talented. And
Yes.
this is one of those points where he was a babyface because there's been times where Goldust is not a babyface, but as a babyface, you get to see Dustin Rhodes and his natural just fire and his comebacks and that Southern style influence from his roots being in WCW kind of shine through when he wrestles as a babyface. And so like his comebacks are beautiful. The scoop slam, power slam that he does is gorgeous. So I enjoy that stuff. Otherwise, this is very much just kind of there. And it's professional work. You know, nothing looks like awful or bad or sloppy or out of place. But there just isn't much juice to this. And like, there's nothing to push it over the hump as like a notably good match, in my opinion.
Yeah. Like I said, it's almost like more of the story is the gals ringside. Even though the work inside the ring is good, like especially like the beginning of the match, Goldust has fire right away. He's knocking Triple H all over the place. They do like the rope spot where he gets tied up in the ropes, but like on the outside, which I thought was pretty unique. The classic Goldust uppercut looks really good here.
Yes.
I did enjoy the finishing stretch. We got some good counters, and like so Goldust goes for the curtain call, countered. Triple H goes for the pedigree, countered. Goldust goes for the curtain call again, but sees China approaching Marlena on the outside, so he lets go of H, pulls Marlena on the apron, and Hunter with a knee to the back of Goldust, which makes him bump into Marlena, which sends Marlena into another bear hug from China, and China just breaks her in half. I need somebody to break me in half like that. But anywhoozle, Triple H with the pedigree onto Goldust for the win, and Goldust is left with this broken corpse of Marlena in his arms, which is, I guess, the image we're
Clutching onto her and everything. Yeah.
she'll never be okay again. Trying to smoke that cigar. It drives me crazy how much Marlena like they cut to her with the cigar, and Vince is like, Marlena looking on in anguish, and she just has a cigar in her mouth. Is like licking the tip of it. It's like
Never actually like, smoking it or anything. Yeah.
no, it's smoking, but she clearly like doesn't like cigars. So it's a whole
Right.
thing,
It's so funny. Yeah.
yeah, a fine match, but we venture backstage into the cyberspace.
Oh yeah, with the famous. This was part of my notes. I wrote the meme, or Shawn
Here
Michaels
it is.
trying to use this laptop. It's funny. I my first access to the internet, I had this big like blocky square Windows computer.
Yes,
that was from like 95 ish. And that's what was in my house, Kyle, until about 2006, legitimately. And then
same here.
And then we got the flat screen like Dell. No, was it Dell or HP computer? But the point I'm getting at is, I didn't have like a laptop in my house until like late in the 2000s. And so as I watch this, I just go like, what were laptops from 1997 even like?
Right.
Because he's
so heavy.
They're super big and heavy and blocky. I'm just curious. what the first laptop or what the 1997 laptops looked like. So I was just fascinated by that. I wanted to look it up, but I didn't have time.
It's crazy, yeah, because I think we're like relatively same age, or like early 30s, right?
Not yet. Luckily, it's funny. There's a misconception. They like to call me Unk on wrestling Twitter,
right?
And I am an old soul in the sense that I've grown up around like old media and older technology, just mainly because I was broke when I was a kid. But I say all this to say, I am barely hanging on to my 20s by a thread.
Ooh, scoop dropping here.
Scoop dropping.
He's not 40 years old, contrary to popular belief.
Right. Backup Hangman is a barely millennial 90s baby.
Ooh, fresh. He's fresh for the picking, ladies and gentlemen.
Right.
But yeah, so I guess you never talked to anybody on AIM. No wrestlers on the AOL. You did?
I did use AIM actually.
Did you talk to Shawn Michaels?
I did not talk to Shawn Michaels.
Had to take forever to have a conversation with him. Just beep booping on those keyboards.
I remember AIM. There was another one that I'm like forgetting off the top of my head right now.
What was your AIM username?
I think it was like Ibou the Black Man or something like that.
Hey, that was mine too. So there's different numbers at the end,
right? But like, yeah, like you were Ibou the Black Man 725.
I was wondering, like somebody has this name already. What are the odds?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Well, anyways, man, I wish the street fight was after that. That'd be a good transition. But no, we have the tag team title match up next. We got the team of Owen and Bulldog, British Bulldog, in case anybody's unfamiliar, defending against Mankind and Vader, which is just a crazy tag team. Cactus Jack and Vader on the same team.
It's time. It's Vader. Time. Boom, boom. Boom, boom.
Time. Brother.
Boom.
Okay.
And then I don't even remember what I think Mankind came out to the.
They came out together here. They just came out to Vader's music.
That's what it was. Because I was asking myself, did I hear the Mankind theme on this show? I guess not. But
no.
I rubbed my hands together for this one because I'm a big fan of all four of these wrestlers. I was like, oh, Mick Foley, Vader, Owen and Bulldog. And it's crazy because in '99, Bulldog is like a bad wrestler, and he's like super
jeans Bulldog.
Yeah, but like as far as '97, like he's still awesome. And
yes,
him and Owen were a great tag team. They were a great tag team, and so I was locked in on this. I was like, hell yeah, man, let's go. And, this is not like some super memorable match or anything or even really notable. Like, it was just kind of fine. And it went to like a double count out or a DQ or whatever it was. But these are the type of wrestlers that I just enjoy watching just exist and doing things. And their work looks good. And they look like $1 million. Like, Owen comes out with his slammies and the championship. And they just look awesome. So I was happy to watch this. I was happy to see these guys. And you know what? My mind started to drift, Kyle. And I started to kind of just play the what if game in my brain. And I was just thinking like, man, 97 was when WWF finally like everything clicked for the company. Right. And I just thought not 97, 98. And I just thought like, what if Bulldog and Shawn, like what if Shawn stayed healthy and Bulldog was still there and Bret was still there? Because like the thing about 98 is there's a lot of like Austin versus Kane and Austin versus Taker.
Dude love.
Yeah. And it's
which
like,
actually isn't that bad, but
no, the dude love stuff is good.
Yeah.
But like a lot of that was means to an end because the truth is the juice was Vince and Austin in their feud. And really it's just month by month of them figuring out who's going to be like aligned with Vince that they could send at Austin. And so like the whole second half of 98 is just like, well, the Undertaker, or like he has a problem with Kane, and Kane is working with Vince for this. And first,
and now it's a double pin, and now it's vacated. Now it's a ladder, and
right. And it's like, yeah, like I don't love a lot of that stuff. And so like I just thought about like, man, like just all these what if Pillman was healthy and like he could like and he didn't die and like he fucking worked Austin? What if he could have worked like what if Bulldog? What if they rebranded Bulldog? Because here's the thing. 98, if he stayed, right, this is what would have happened. They would have given him black clothes and like shades because that's like what everybody did when they rebranded. That's what happened to the Godwins. That's what happened to like Savio, like everybody, right? So it's like he probably would have been in the corporation with like shades or some shit and like a cool fucking sleeveless ripped sleeve like jacket or something. But like imagine a Bulldog repackaging where he works Austin for a month and they have a cool fucking badass match. Imagine
it just goes by Dave Smith instead of the British Bulldog.
That's the other thing. Russo was fully into like, bro, we gotta be real, bro. everything has to be real. No more characters, no more gimmicks. We gotta be the real guy. And so, like, that's the thing. Like, they probably would have been like, instead of the British Bulldog Davey Boy Smith, they would have just been like you said, like Dave Smith or some shit. Or like, I don't know. The funny thing is, he probably would have been in like the Ministry of Darkness or some shit, like as like a acolyte, and like he would have like those weird symbols on his chest, you know. And like,
his chest is built for symbols.
It's built for symbols, you know.
It seems blank for sure.
Exactly, bro. You got to put the symbols on there, bro. And then like Undertaker just being like, you are no longer Bulldog. You are wolf or some shit, you know. But
yeah, it was like an evil dog, like a Saint Bernard or a
exactly
some stupid shit.
But yeah, I say all that to say, like, man, like Amanda Steve Austin had like a different host of like a different rogues gallery of villains to go through in the second of 98. It would just be really fun, you know. And the other one I think about, this is like a super random anecdote here, but like 98, Ric Flair was in muddy waters with WCW, and there was a long period where he wasn't on the show, and he had issues with Bischoff, and they had to figure that out. And in the middle of 98, you know, people who were there would remember that there were rumors that he was going to jump ship.
Right.
And I thought about that because like by 98, Ric Flair is no longer the guy who's seen as like the best wrestler in the world, of course, but he can still get it done. And I honestly believe if Ric Flair came to the WWF in 98, I do think him and Austin would have had some like historically memorable brawls on pay-per-view.
Oh yeah. Did they ever wrestle in WCW? They had to have, right?
They had to. I think they did actually. I want to say opposite in tags, like probably like Hollywood Blondes versus like him and Arn or something. I'm pretty sure those matches happened.
Right.
But
98 with the star power of each of those guys, though, would have been another level.
Saying like, oh my god, like Ric Flair just being like
the promos, dude.
Yeah, him just be like, you're a little mid Carter, or just him shitting on him, and also like, this ain't the Southern show. I'm the man here. I'm the toughest son of a bitch, and him talking shit, and him and fucking Ric Flair being like, whoa, and like them just chopping and punching.
Oh, the chop battles in the corners, switch counters, chop, you chop me. Oh,
like this picture. Because that's the thing, because like they worked a little bit in like 02, but like by that point, like Flair is cooked and Austin is like mentally fried. And it sucks.
Big Show was there.
Yeah, like for some reason, like, but 98, Austin peak of his powers, Ric Flair with still something in the tank and some motivation.
David Flair comes over. He has a match with Austin on a pay-per-view. I mean,
just imagine, like, here's the thing, because the bell would ring, they'd brawl in the crowd, right? They fight in the stands and shit.
Of course.
And yeah, chops. They'd one guy would throw a chair at the other guy. It would just be this really like unvarnished, unbridled, fucking chaotic scene, right? They make it to the stands. Ric Flair pokes him in the eye or low blows him. You know, they're both fighting dirty, right? You know, they get back around the ring. Austin takes a wire, chokes him out or some shit. They're throwing bells at each other. They're doing this and that. They're chopping on the outside. Flair chops him. Jim Ross is like fucking erect as fuck at this point. He's just, they're fighting. They're chopping. It's crazy. It's wild. This is the WWF. This is what we do over here. It's not about posing. It's not about the bald spot.
Covering your bald spot.
It's not about covering your bald spot. It's about getting out there and fighting. And they're doing that shit. They get in the ring at this point because it's 98. Big Boss Man's gonna like run out there for some point. At some point. It's the Boss Man. He paid Flair. And it's, but yeah, they do all that shit. You get the twists and the turns. Figure four. It would just be at some point they're both bleeding like stuck pigs. Dave Meltzer would have given it like 4 1/4 stars or some shit.
He would have started a new Horseman with like X-Pac and or bring Jeff Jarrett back maybe.
The 98 WWF Horseman would have definitely been Jarrett, Flair.
Ooh, that's it's a fun question. Who else is around?
Jarrett,
maybe
Flair. Who would fit this thing?
98.
Who is like a very fundamental Southernish word? Would Bradshaw be in this thing?
Ooh, that's a thought. Or maybe like a Dan Severn could be like the enforcer type.
Severn could be in it. All right.
Bart Gunn.
Bart Gunn.
Fuck yeah.
Would Owen be in this? Like, I don't know.
I don't know if I see Owen as a horseman, or unless he's like the Mongo of the group.
But we definitely agree on who was it again? It was going to be Rick
Jarrett,
right? Severn.
Dan Severn.
Do we put Shamrock in this thing? Or is that not his vibe?
I think you got to go either Severn or Shamrock. I don't think you can do both.
So we'll do Severn then, because like he needs this group to survive.
He has a mustache. Yeah. I feel like that just fits the vibe.
Absolutely. So Severn's in it. All right. So the last guy. Let's think here. Let's scan this.
Trying to think of like not Farouk.
No.
D'Lo. No. I almost want to like pull up the roster from
yeah,
1998.
Fucking just do it. Yeah.
WWF roster, because we need to get to the bottom of this.
Yes,
I'm utterly fascinated by this concept. Actually,
yes.
We got Ahmed Johnson.
No.
Let's see here.
Ahmed Johnson would get jumped by the Horsemen, though. They would, and he would cut a promo like, "I don't give a damn about any of them white boys over there," and and he'd fight them and shit.
Man, what a wacky roster. No one's
jumping out at you.
No one's jumping out at me. Giant Silva, no. You could throw another gimmick on Godfather, maybe. Jacques, Jeff Hardy's on the roster. Kevin Kelly. Let's see here. Mark Henry. Mark Marrow might.
Mark Marrow feels possible. That's
like, he's the boxer. He's being a dick to Sable. I feel like you can transition pretty seamlessly.
Right. It's 98, so at some point Flair's gonna try to fuck Sable, and then they're gonna kick out Marrow for being mad about this.
Right.
And then that's gonna be the angle, and they're gonna fight over like her the right to like have her or some shit.
It sounds like it would draw, I think.
It probably.
Shane McMahon.
Flair versus Mark Marrow, they'll have a 3-star match on a pay-per-view, and then like and Sable's at some point in the match, Sable, who had been ringside the entire time looking concerned, is gonna like turn total heel and be like, "Actually, fuck you, Mark Marrow," and kick him in the balls. Right. And it's like, what? And then she's gonna kiss Rick, and you're like, what? And then he's just gonna like fucking pin Marrow and shit. And Jim Ross is like, "Oh, what a Jezebel! What a Jezebel!"
I mean, that puts butts in seats.
Oh, absolutely.
Ibou.
Come on.
I sent you the link of the roster if you want to. There's some names on like Steve Carino's on here.
Wait.
That actually would have been perfect.
I know who it is. Dr. Death would be the fourth guy.
Ooh, Steve Williams, I like that.
Here. Yeah, it would probably be him. Jim Ross wanted to really reheat him to face Austin anyway. So it could be the thing of like, Austin got through Flair, so you'd think he's out of the woods here with the Horsemen. But the real silent killer this whole time was the enforcer here.
Right.
Steve Williams, who's actually the big threat. And he's the one that could beat Steve Austin.
Yeah, and then you can maybe, if you wanted to do a breakup angle, have Steve Williams, Ric Flair, maybe. There's a lot you can do. Or be a tag team, maybe. I don't know.
And if you want to send big men at him, Steve Williams could work Vader. He could work Undertaker. You could do all that type of stuff.
So we got Ric Flair, Jeff Jarrett, Dan Severn, and
Steve Williams.
Steve Williams. Steve Dr. Death. Yeah. I like it. It could have happened.
Hell yeah.
It would have.
What a fun exercise that was. Just like rebooking 98.
I mean, just going through that roster of 98 just threw me through a tailspin. There were some people that I have no idea were touching. Yeah. Just all the characters and the colors and the masks and the face paint. Yes. But now that our brains are all, by the way, I don't even know if we finished talking about that tag team title match. It was a double count out.
Yeah, it was fine. It was fine. I like Vader. Yeah.
I liked all of the pieces involved, but it was kind of unspectacular ultimately.
Correct. Unspectacular. They've all seen better days and had better work within this very year itself. So
right.
Yeah.
Do got to shout out though the European title, which is freshly minted. We are like a week or two, like 3 or 4 weeks away from, or 3 weeks ago, we had the European title tournament finals between Bulldog and Owen, which I just recently watched, which was just outstanding stuff. And
gorgeous wrestling.
That was the peak of the European title, day one. So what are you gonna do? But boy howdy, we got ourselves a dandy of a contest up next. A no holds barred submission match, not an I quit match, a submission match. Bret Hart versus Stone Cold Steve Austin. course, Ken Shamrock, special guest referee. I mean, this could have been a whole episode in itself.
Absolutely.
Just it's been a very long time since I've seen this match, and whenever I like turn on matches that are so highly acclaimed like this, I'm always like, there's no way it's gonna hold up. There's no way it's gonna match my expectations going into it. But watching this, man, it's just like it's the perfect two guys at the perfect time in the perfect setting, and everything was executed flawlessly. I'm sure you have a ton of thoughts on this one. Just open it up. What'd you make of this little ditty?
All right, so I think this is one of the greatest feuds of all time. This program is like the perfect program because there was great wrestling, there was great promos, there was great angles. It elevated somebody at the end of the program, and it also elevated the promotion that it took place in. So, on every level, this was a gigantic winner of a program. Bret Hart comes back in 1996. He loses to Shawn Michaels in the Iron Man match. He takes the majority of the year off while Shawn Michaels is out there to die by himself with the World Championship. Bret comes back. Survivor Series, he says he's not leaving the WWF. And this guy full of piss and vinegar who's ready to take the bull by the horns and take on the world, and Steve Austin is calling him out.
What?
And it's just, I ain't a sexy boy. I'm coming for you. If you put S in front of Hitman, that's what I think of you. All that stuff. Like Steve Austin is a snake in the grass, ready to clip the wings of Bret Hart. And it just, hold on a second. Why is my laptop not charging? Let's fix this. This thing was about to die on me. Let's fix that.
Can't have that happen.
Yeah, I was gonna be mid promo, like kissing the ass of this match, and then this thing was gonna shut off on me. While I fix that, it just Steve Austin. He's what I think every wrestler that wants to be great should study. In the sense that, oh no, hold on.
He's taking his shirt off, everybody, for those listening.
Right.
He's getting ready. He's getting oiled up.
Dude, no joke. My laptop was like a second away from like completely shutting off and dying.
Damn,
and
what a near fall.
It was a near fall. It was totally a near fall.
You're building drama just in the podcast, talking about the drama. I mean, this is just next level podcasting from Ibou of Wrestle Purist.
100%. Only the best for the apron bump, you know. But
I appreciate it.
Right. So like it just Bret Hart was WWF's hero for years. He had been there since the mid 80s. And Bret's approach to wrestling is it has to be real to him. That's the only way he knows. He's never been a character. He never will be. And it's just so perfect because all of this was real to the people involved. Bret Hart was WWF's hero. He was their babyface. He was their role model. He was the guy that did things by the book, straight-laced, great wrestler from a great family. He was like I said, the role model to all these kids. And he takes some time off. He comes back, and it's like society, the promotion, the layout and the makeup of the promotion is changing all around him. And it's deeply fascinating to see Bret go through the gears emotionally and personally in terms of how he reacts to the change around him. Because it's one of those things where it's like he is very much consistent with his own beliefs and his own moral compass. And yet he is seen totally different by these fans. And that's the storyline, but that's also the reality. He was not a fan of the moral shift within the WWF. He was not a fan of the increased violence and sex and profanity. That's not what he believes in. In 1997, he's on record in saying he told his kids to stop watching the show. And it's so fascinating to see how this guy was the punk kid that called him out, and he beat him at Survivor Series. But it was very clear at Survivor Series that Austin was very formidable, and Bret barely got by. He didn't beat him with a sharpshooter. Austin didn't tap out to the sharpshooter. Bret didn't beat him with some type of wrestling maneuver. He just was able to escape the $1 Million Dream and pin him. Barely.
Right.
The next couple months happen, and Bret's very fairly complaining about numerous things. Shawn Michaels, the fact that he keeps getting screwed out of the WWF Championship, so on and so forth. And like I said, all these complaints in isolation are justified. However, to these fans, this guy's just being a fucking whiny bitch. And and Steve Austin is cool. And we don't care that he's a dickhead. We don't care that he's a bit of an anarchist. We don't care that he's, rude or crass. He's awesome. And he represents the man's man. He represents the people. Even though he's not trying to. He doesn't give a fuck. He's just being himself. And so, again, just like the morality play that's happening here is fascinating. Because, again, it's a microcosm of the promotion. Where is WWF going? Are they veering to the dark side? Is the dark side actually the dark side? Is it the public that's wrong, or is it Bret that's wrong? And Bret's answer that he came up with coming out of this show was basically, you guys are the problem. And it's like the only good you people promo in the history of pro wrestling. Because you people promos suck, but Bret's is good because it makes sense for him. His whole worldview is being fucking thrown for a loop. And he's like, what the fuck is going on? Have you all lost your minds?
It makes sense because, like you said, he didn't change. Like his core values, who he was, never changed.
Did not change. And yet, I'm now the bad guy. And so it's not a complicated concept. The good guy or the villain feels justified, but the execution and how this was handled is beautiful. Again, the angles leading up to this match were fantastic, dating all the way back to late 96 when they're doing split screen interviews and Austin's talking about like, I'm a whip your ass and da 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 da. And Bret's kind of like, your language there, ask me to work on that, sir. But I think Steve Austin's a great wrestler, McMahon. I think he's a tremendous wrestler in the WWF. I'm looking forward to wrestling him at Survivor Series. And Austin's basically like, go fuck yourself, And then leading to now where you have the fucking segment where he pushes Vince and he's like, this is bullshit, and everybody screws me. And you know what's so great about that segment, Kyle?
Tell me.
In modern wrestling, because everything is so pre-planned and so produced, people don't argue anymore. People take turns talking at each other in promos. Right. It's very contrived. And we're used to it as wrestling fans because that's how it's been done for 25 years. But you go back to that segment, Austin's not waiting for Bret to say his thing to then say his piece. He got on the camera because presumably while Bret's ranting, he ran in front of a camera backstage and said, shoot me on the big screen. And he's just kind of like, you lost because you're a loser. You lost because you're a baby. That's why we both could have been fighting for the championship. And while he's saying this, Bret's just kind of talking over him. He's screaming at him, you know why they call you Stone Cold? Because your stones are so cold and you won't come out to fight me or whatever he said. So
it sounds like a Bret Hart insult.
Yeah, because your stones are so cold. It's like, all right, cool. And
fucking got him.
Awesome. You got him. And Austin, he doesn't listen to that. He's man, fuck this. I'm gonna go fight this dude. And he just walks away. He's out there within like
they show the empty chair or whatever, and just the logo in the background. Then they fight.
And then they're fighting on the ramp. And it's like, that's what I want out of my pro wrestling. These two guys, these two badasses, one at the incumbent top guy, and another one on the massive ace set who will not be denied at any turn. He is so unfettered and so, so undaunted in his path to becoming the man in this entire industry. And he's so hungry. It's
hunger, yeah.
So hungry. And he's been coming at Bret this entire time like a fucking bloodthirsty hyena. And you make it to Chicago. Like I told you at the beginning of the show, this is a stronghold for hardcore wrestling fans. If any crowd is going to appreciate a tremendous match, it's going to be Chicago, Illinois. And on this day in 1997, these guys had one of the greatest matches in the history of the WWF. Not just Mania, not just this or that, in the history of the WWF, in the history of pro wrestling, frankly, because we had this tremendous story with great narrative framework that highlights what's happening in society and the promotion and all that stuff I just said. But at the end of the day, they gotta wrestle, dude. The bell has to ring. Yes. They gotta deliver. And they fucking delivered because they're fighting on the outside and they're brawling and there's this and that and there's so much vengeful anger and emotion and intensity. The intensity is off the goddamn charts. And you know who was on his game on this night, dude? It wasn't just Steve Austin. It wasn't just Bret Hart. It was Jim Ross, the guy who was the soundtrack to this match. And he told the correct story from the beginning. He was the definition of being locked the fuck in, because he had to communicate to these people what's happening. And here's the thing. He doesn't have to, because these guys are such good storytellers that you can make it out from the match. But he was a tremendous complimentary soundtrack. Steve Austin, he's a bad son of a bitch. Like him or hate him, love him or hate him, it doesn't matter. You have to respect this guy. And Bret Hart is the guy who maybe lost his way a little bit. Maybe he's kind of going a little bit over the top. Maybe he's losing his mind. Maybe he's losing his sense of self. Maybe he's losing who he is, but Jim Ross is still trying to like give him that courteous respect because of what he's done. But Lawler and McMahon are the people that are fairly pointing out like, hey man, you could say all that shit, but like he's losing his mind a bit here. And he's all that stuff. And so that's the story being communicated to you, and they're fighting and they're doing all this stuff. And it's just an emotional roller coaster. And what I love so much about this is I want people to consider this. If you're familiar with Steve Austin's main events from this point onward, and you've seen wrestling up until today, there's aspects of this that maybe won't hit you in a sense, because it's like, yeah, I've seen crowd brawling before. Yeah, of course, people bleed sometimes in big main events. And I'm not saying this match invented crowd brawling, because it absolutely did not. But at this time in 1997, there were very few big matches on American pay-per-view that looked like this. And it's drawing from influences that weren't actively being drawn from at the time. This type of thing is like an expansion of what you would see in like Memphis in like the fucking early 80s. And then, and so it's like a lot of that kind of trickling in. And it's like, that grittiness that you don't even see in WWF, that wasn't a part of the DNA of Vince McMahon's promotion. This type of grit, just the crowd brawling, the anger, the violence. And so that stuff all kind of came together perfectly. And it was so influential because this kind of gave you the layout of what the formula should be for Steve Austin. Crowd brawling, blood, emotion, high drama. And it all came together perfectly on this night. If anybody out there tells you that Steve Austin isn't a great wrestler, they're fucking wrong.
No, yeah.
They're fucking wrong. He is the textbook definition of making you feel. This guy and his physical charisma, there's a part in this match, Kyle. Everybody talks about the sharpshooter. But there's a part in this match where he's bloody faced. And he shoots Bret straight to the turnbuckle, chest first. Bret takes the great Bret Hart bump on the turnbuckle. Boom, right? And then Austin picks his head up. He picks up Bret's head with one hand. And he's like head bobbling, talking so much shit. Like Austin with his fucking bald head is basically, get up, motherfucker, get up, you son of a bitch. Right? He's doing all that shit. And all you hear is Jim Ross go, Austin's a stud. Austin's a stud. And he picks him up, throws into the corner, does those corner stops, boom, 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 the mud hole, which everybody knows. But in this match, it's just boom, 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 boom. And then middle fingers, double middle fingers, and then one last stop right to the face, boom. And it's awesome. And over the course of the match, the crowd is naturally picking the side. They're naturally doing it. And what I say by that is, in modern wrestling, in a lot of modern matches, these things have to be much more theatrical and much more unsubtle, because they have to kind of like hit you over the head with everything. It has to be like a big drawn out facial expression, maybe even mid-match dialogue, where it's like, you were never my friend, I'm your friend. It's almost like wrestling now has cutscenes sometimes in big matches. And your preference can be your preference, but like, I think it's really well done art when that's not necessary and people get the message, and the fans got the message here. Again, Steve Austin, he's not a good guy, but he's a guy who you have to respect as being somebody, like I said, who will not be denied as the top guy in this promotion. And the guts and the tenacity when he's in that sharpshooter and he's bleeding, and you get the iconic visual where he's powering out of it. He succeeds the first time, doesn't succeed the second time, refuses to tap out, passes out, and then Ken Shamrock has to rip Bret Hart off, and Jim Ross is screaming in your ear, he didn't tap out. He refused to tap out. Fucking pristine. And beyond all that, the post-match is almost just as magical as the match.
Yeah.
Because so many things were achieved. Bret Hart turned heel. Ken Shamrock was established as a badass. The way he rips Bret Hart off. And Steve Austin is babyface. The way he refused the help and did the stunner on the referee and walks off slowly. He limps, sells his ass off, and he walks with the hand on the hip, and he stands there and he looks up at the fans. He looks up after the match, and the fans start chanting Austin as you kind of pan around. It's like beautiful. It's poetic. This entire thing was just incredible. The feud, the angles, the promos, the match, the post-match, and then you get the historical significance of the fact that this match absolutely catapulted Steve Austin into superstardom.
Yes.
Like, he had already been that guy who was like a cult favorite, so to speak. But like, it wasn't him beating Shawn Michaels in 1998 that set him on the path. He already was on the path. It was this match right here. Mm-hmm. And from this point onward, Steve Austin was going to be the guy that would take WWF to the promised land. If it was going to happen, if they were going to beat WCW, if they were going to reclaim their spot as a top promotion, if they were going to explode their business, it was going to be on the backs of this guy alone. It wasn't going to be off Shawn Michaels or Bret Hart, who are tremendous wrestlers. It wasn't going to be Undertaker. It was going to be Steve Austin. Mm-hmm. And this night illustrated that. This match illustrated that. And if I could grow a third thumb, I'd give this 3 thumbs up.
No, it's I mean, you nailed it. It's so there's so many variables that make this match what it is in terms of how everybody, praises this as one of the best matches ever, which of course it is. It's just like you said, it accomplished so much. It gave Bret a new direction. It solidified his new direction. Ken Shamrock was established, and Steve Austin, like he was the type of character that the crowd was hungry for. Like where society was, like not even just wrestling, TV, music, whatever the hell. Like we're approaching that attitude era where it's that grungy, it's the grittiness, it's the ass kicking, like vulgarity, like, and Steve Austin represented that perfectly, and he's perfectly what the crowd wanted. Especially we're in the midst of the NWO and ECW, and we see all these other acts catching fire that are more based in kind of reality. And that's really overall this match, everything, the build, the match itself, everything was just so rooted in reality, and it felt genuine. Not to open up another can of worms, but CM Punk, Drew McIntyre.
Yes.
Very similar deal where like we're watching these guys fight, or their promos, even another series of promos where it's not like you say your thing, I say my thing. It's two guys that I believe hate each other, and now it's translating into a bell-to-bell wrestling match. And I mean, this match, like, it kicks off, and there's no like face off. There's no let's circle the ring, little tie up. It's just brawl right from the get-go. Mm-hmm. The crowd is so into this. And I think that's so important with this match is the foundation that has been set for it, the build up, the characters, everything that had to fall into place. Shawn Michaels losing his smile, and how bitter that made Bret, and Steve Austin is so hungry, and all of these pieces came together. There's just so much fire to this match. There's no match out there with more fire than this one. The crowd brawling, which I typically don't really like crowd brawling, but it worked in this scenario, especially with how novel it was at this point. The blood, of course, which is something that you didn't really see in wrestling a lot at this point. And so that added a whole new layer of like just violence and sympathy for Steve Austin, which of course the goal here is to establish Steve Austin as the new babyface, established Bret as the heel, and everything they did in this match worked towards that. And everything was just so seamless. It felt organic. The build was organic, but the match was organic. Like, they weren't setting up for spots. It wasn't like, oh, let's do the heat segment, put a little chin lock here, then you'll do your finish, and I'll do my finish. It's just guys kicking the shit out of each other. chairs, whatever's around. Oh, here's an electrical cord. Let me choke you with it. Here's a chair. Oh, but it's a submission match, so I'm actually using the chair on your knee instead of smashing you over the head with it. Like the psychology and everything made sense. And yeah, I mean, the figure four around the ring post, like they're working towards the submissions, which all makes sense. Steve Austin busts out like a Koji clutch like move. Like, what the fuck is that? What are we doing? But it was all great. And just seeing what else we haven't even touched. I mean, there's so much to get into with this. It's the perfect, like, anybody who's like getting into wrestling, like, this is the match you should watch. The bell shots, there's one point where Bret's trying to lock in the sharpshooter, but Stone Cold, he gets out of it with an eye rake, and then later in the match, Steve tries to put on the sharpshooter, and then Bret comes back with the eye rake. So two guys, it's like fuck you. It's very fuck you energy, this match.
Yes.
And it's they tease the Pillman spot with the chair on the leg.
That was just, the chair stuff is so awesome. Like, is it just me? The blue chairs always felt more brutal.
I do like how Bret, the first chair he picked up was one of those padded ones. He's like, nah, fuck that. And he grabs the blue one that has no padding on it. But yes,
those WWF blue chairs just are so sick. And like, that's the other thing. It's like they could use weapons, but like they were very focused in how they used them. And it made it impactful, whether it be the rope, the wire, or like the wire cord, or the chair, or the ring bell. And it leads to like really iconic moments. Austin's chair shot to Bret when Bret's on the top turnbuckle is such a great visual. The way he just wildly swings it at Bret, and Bret falls.
But he can barely stand up. It's like a desperation chair shot, but he hits him. It's like,
so good. It's so good. It's so memorable.
Yeah, it's like it's not a plunder match,
no,
even though there's plunder involved. But it's literally just a street fight. It feels like a street fight. It feels like it's just two guys doing whatever they need to do to win the match, because ultimately they're here to win. You feel like these guys want to win. No titles on the line, but it feels so, it feels like the stakes are so high. The ending stretch with the bell shots, because Austin has the cord around Bret Hart. Bret Hart grabs the bell, which he like introduced to the match like in the beginning, and it was never even acknowledged, and it just happened to be there. And just the positioning of everything in this match, that's just one instance where it was so perfect. But Bret clocks Austin with this belt. Austin, who's already pouring blood, gets locked into the sharpshooter. Everybody knows the moment, the iconic imagery of Austin hulking himself up, trying to get to those ropes. You see the passion in his eyes. The blood is pouring. He almost gets out of it, but Bret holds on. So you get that instance of hope, but it's like, oh no, he didn't do it. And then he just passes out, which is just, you couldn't have had a more perfect ending to a match in terms of like how they were trying to establish Austin as a guy that won't quit. The damage Austin's taken, the punishment, it's very clear that this guy's a next level tough, and that's kind of what's portrayed in this match. And just like we said, it's just everything they set out to accomplish in this match was done perfectly. It was a fun ride. The crowd was at 100% energy the entire time, and that's just a testament to these characters, how well the characters are established, how relatable Steve Austin is, how people don't like Bret. And by the way, from like a dead stop of the previous match, it's not like they had a good lead in that had the crowd amped. Like they had a double count out and they're like, oh, what the fuck? And now we have this. So yeah. And then like you said, the post-match stuff, I think just put a great bow on it with Bret's post-match beatdown. It's like, oh, what a sore winner. And then Shamrock suplexes the shit out of him. So it's like, oh yeah, Shamrock's here and he's a beast. So that's a whole other thing. Then Austin, he stuns a ref, but it's like a kind of a weak stunner. He's like barely able to stand up, but he's still this anti-establishment guy, and he walks out limping, like you mentioned. And the commentary, it's just all these variables, and they shoot to the pool of blood in the ring as the commentary's talking. They just show this pool of blood. It's just wild stuff.
Absolutely.
I'd go on the record and say maybe that was match of the night.
Yeah, I think so. Sultan and Rock might have a bit of an argument there, but That'll be debated for a while, for sure. It's been debated for 30 years, so
Right. There wasn't no curly shoes in this one. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, no Bob Backlund. I don't think. Let's
I might put the other one over the top. Yeah.
Do you think? I was going to touch on this later, but I guess. Do you think because Shawn Michaels is here?
Yes.
He's in the building. He's a guest commentator for the main events. Is it? I mean, obviously, in hindsight, this felt so perfect. But what do you think? Like, what if Shawn Michaels was the special guest ref instead of Shamrock? Do you think they would have added, taken away from it?
I think it would have taken away from the match.
I think I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm glad it was Shamrock. You needed just an enforcer to make sure that these two badasses won't get out of line. Shawn Michaels makes it more of a storyline thing, and then like you're gonna get a lot of like Bret Shawn stuff. Which I mean, I
would have been the Seth Rollins of the trio.
Correct. And here's the thing: I love the Bret Shawn stuff, but this wouldn't have been the match for that.
Yeah, no, I think I agree. But yeah, great stuff. Great stuff there. I know we're not really going out on a limb and saying this is a great match. But
yeah, right. Hot take.
Hot take alert. But it was. But if you haven't seen it, anybody listening, it's definitely worth. Or if you haven't watched it in a while, it's a good way to kind of see what wrestling can be. It was
Absolutely.
great stuff. But there were no nooses in that match. So, oh wait, there's one in this next match. I forgot. Right. Farouk is here with a promo. It's going from that to fucking
of domination. I forgot the first version of this theme had like a rap verse where it's like, "We are the nation, we're alive and in color. Don't mess around or we'll bum rush your mama."
PG-13, man. Shout out.
Hell yeah.
What are their names? JC Ice and Wolfie D. I mean, the goats. The goats.
Hell yeah.
Man, this Farouk Ahmed Johnson feud. It's been plagued with injuries.
Yeah.
Kidney injuries and just overall, like, I don't know. How do you look? You might be more able to speak about this feud than I. What were your thoughts on just this overall feud between Ahmed and Farouk and the Nation and all that?
Deeply fascinating.
Right.
It's deeply fascinating. The funny thing about it is, have you ever seen their argument over the phone at one of those WWF shows? I forgot what the one it was called, but the one where, like, it's the show where they like get fan mails and shit like that, and like,
I don't think I've seen it, but I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and like, Farouk is on the phone, or one of them is on the phone with the other one, and they're just arguing over the phone, and like, it just sounds like two like black uncles at like a gathering, just like arguing with each other, and like it's just kind of like, "I'm gonna slap your black ass when I see you at WrestleMania." And he's just like, "No, you ain't. No, you finna. No, you ain't. Cause I'm finna bust your head when I da da da." And they're just going back and forth, and it's awesome. It's very like, it's very real. What I would say is that the WWF tried a lot of like race stuff this year, and like, it's usually something I wouldn't go for in pro wrestling, given like the majority of the audience of pro wrestling. But but look, it was fascinating, and if nothing else, it was pretty bold. And I wouldn't say every swing was a miss. And in the case of this program, I'd have to go back and like really watch it in detail. But I will say, if you want to have a couple badasses fighting other badasses, you can't really go wrong with Ahmed Johnson and the Legion of Doom. And
dude,
so,
what a team!
What a team!
It's like we've mentioned, they're in Chicago, so obviously we got to have the old Legion of Doom here. So we got a 6-man Chicago street fight. Ahmed Johnson and the LOD taking on the Nation, who is represented by Farouk, Savio Vega, and Crush. What is this fucking version of the Nation?
Yeah, this version of the Nation is insane. D'Lo Brown is there as like just like one of the like Nation members, like in the suit and stuff.
Dude, I was looking at this. I'm looking at this lineup of everybody involved in this match. It's crazy that D'Lo Brown, who is just a nameless henchman at this point, has arguably had the best run in this company.
It's insane.
I mean, it's not that there's a lot of, Clarence Mason, fucking
Clarence
D.
Mason.
Yeah. It's just a wild.
I mean, that guy. Did they just cut him? Like, what?
I don't really I think Clarence Mason was a little bit before my time as
Mhm.
far as when I got into the. Well, where's he at now? Is he still around?
I'm going to look up right now what happened.
He's still alive. He's still alive. That's something.
Clarence Mason.
He's only 59 right now. That's kind of crazy.
All right,
I guess he's pretty young here.
Yeah, he was 32 here, and his WWF career, 95, 97. He right here.
Got fired in June 97.
Yeah, June 97. Farouk fired Mason from the Nation of Domination. According to Mason in a shoot interview, he requested to be taken out of the Nation because he was uncomfortable with their racial comments and storylines and interviews they were doing. The other reason was because McMahon wanted managers to start taking more bumps and getting involved in matches. And Mason was written off television and released from his contract. They told him, "You got to eat some choke slams, buddy." And he was like, "Fuck no, fuck no, no, I fucking don't." Good for him, I guess.
God. He had a little run in WCW afterwards, and that's pretty much where his Wikipedia ends. So probably for the best, though. Probably for the best.
I'm sure
he's a lawyer. He has other things to do, right?
I was going to say, I'm sure he's having a nice little life, you know. Yeah, so.
Oh, is he a shoot lawyer? Is his alma mater is Southern University Law Center? I'm assuming that's law school.
You would think, right?
Or like police academy. I don't know. No, you know, but. Yeah, we got a street fight here. This was a plunder match. Very ECW kind of paced match. They got the old trash can full of weapons the Nation brings out with 2x4. They got like a parking sign, like a comically big sign that they bring out. Mm-hmm. Obviously, LOD's just over like Rover here in Chicago. And Ahmed and the Legion, they all come out wearing spikes. And I recently saw this meme online. I forget the exact wording, but Ahmed crawled so that white women nowadays can run because they have like the same gear.
Yes. All the straps and like apparatus
for no reason.
Just raise the butt cheeks up and all that.
Cheeks were fully baked
yes,
in this one. I mean, he had to do some squats before he came out here because he was pumped up.
Absolutely.
Kind of hard to focus on anything else, but so you love plunder matches, right?
No, I don't. But I'll tell you this.
Oh, I thought you did.
I'll tell you what. I always love watching genres of wrestling when they're in their formative years, because when you're in your formative years, there's a lot of experimentation and tinkering, and you're not adhering to set formulas. Plunder matches now are boring because we've seen every spot under the sun and we know the rhythms of them. And they're also highly produced. So you get these kind of set piece moments in plunder matches. Here, we're still in the like, just do a bunch of shit phase. And like, some of the shit will happen at the same time as other shit and the camera can't catch all of it. And then eventually we just have to go home, you know, with the finish. And so I like how unstructured this match is. You know, there's not like this thing and then the camera's waiting for this spot and then they called this thing in the back. They're literally just like using fucking fire extinguishers and trash cans, and
everybody grab a trash can lid, just wacky everybody for a while, then it's just, like you said, we'll go home.
It's dudes on steroids whacking each other with trash cans. And and it's like, all right, cool. And then like Road Warrior Hawk teases like a pile driver off the table, kind of slips off, and like you get like a kind of a shitty one off the table, but
could not have looked worse. He missed the table. He's standing on it. How'd he miss it?
I saw it and I was like, oh hell yeah. I was like, this is my type of wrestling match.
Yeah, it's gritty, if nothing else. Like, I mean, there is something to it not being overly produced and let's set this ladder on top of this ladder and that whole thing.
Yeah, I think it's charming in that sense. And just that vibe, this gritty fight in Chicago with the Road Warriors. I got into that. And we get like this kind of like power slam thing from Ahmed Johnson through the table that looked really good.
Yes.
It's just a lot of chaos. A lot of random Nation guys like fighting on the outside and like getting involved. And like obviously this is not going to threaten for anybody's match of the year list, but I thought this was the second best match on this show. And
really?
Yeah. And I'll tell you,
I guess
I'll tell you what I said at the top of the show, that like there's things on this event that like resonated with the fans and things that didn't. And the tag match that I was fine with, Vader and Mankind versus Bulldog and Owen, the fans didn't really know what to make of it. And part of that was because it was 2 heel tag teams facing each other, but they didn't know what to make of it. And there's things on the show, Sultan versus Maivia. That's not what the fans are here for. You know, that's very much from a different time. That's 1994 ass shit. This match, though, is what they're into. They want to see shit breaking and people hitting people with things and manly men fucking breaking stuff and slamming people. That's what they want to see. And so kind of what helped me get into this was that Chicago was into it. They just want to see LOD be badasses. They want to see all that type of stuff. So they're chanting LOD. They're getting into all that stuff. The Doomsday Device was sick. The post-match was fun where you get the double Doomsday Device from Hawk and you get the Pearl River Plunge, which was just like a sloppy version of Misawa's Tiger Driver. It all was just kind of fun for me. And it was a crowd pleaser, if nothing else. And again, we're seeing what's working in 1997. Badassery, cool moves, tough guys, grittiness, brawling, violence, chaos, blood. And in this thing, they're portrayed as just like a street gang versus like these other guys. And it's like, it's not about morality anymore. It's not about good versus evil anymore. It's just about like chaos and rebellion and violence. And this was the fans' way to release their, aggression, so to speak. And I thought it worked in that sense. And again, like I said, I got a kick out of how unstructured it was. And so like, yeah, it's sloppy and like kind of all over the place and like a bit of a mess and threatens to like fall completely apart before it doesn't. But I think those things are a bit of a feature of this match rather than a flaw.
Right. Yeah, it added another texture to the show. Like imagine following up Bret and Austin with like Mark Marrow versus fucking another wrestler in a singles match. Like there's no other way to follow that match than with just utter chaos, which is what it was. And like you said, like the fact that it's so rough around the edges, I think added to it rather than took away from it. Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's just not a lot of like milestones in this match. It is just let me hit you with this thing for a little bit, then you hit me with another thing. We'll have a fire extinguisher. Was the noose spot completely necessary?
No, absolutely not. And
I will say though, Hawk got hung with it too, so it's okay.
It's crazy because you knew the fucking producers back. They're like, Pat Patterson's like, if you get the black guy to do it, they'll be okay with it. And you got fucking Vince Russo like, bro, we'll have Farouk do it, bro. It'll be fine, bro. It'll be fucking Farouk, bro. It'll be cool. And Vince is like, oh, you're sure we won't get any lawsuits or anything like that? And like, it was clearly like that type of thing. And yeah, doesn't age well, bit cringe, but that was the thing that they did in this match.
That is the foundation of the feud, though. Is like Farouk calling Ahmed and Uncle Tom is like, for lack of a better term, he's not a real black guy, and that's pretty much like his source of hatred. So it makes sense, I guess. But like, I could have done without it. But
yes, absolutely.
Well, like I said, Hawk also gets hung by it, so it's it's even Steven. But yeah, baby faces win. Good moment. Chicago is hot for LOD. Get a few Doomsdays. Doomsday on Crush for the win, and then a double Doomsday on PG-13, another Pearl River Plunge. Farouk skedaddles, so kind of a step like setting up for a rematch of some sort in the future. So it was fun. It was dumb fun, is what I can say. And sometimes it's all you need.
Yeah, it works on this show.
I'll tell you what was not dumb fun. It was just dumb. You got the WWF heavyweight title on the line. In I guess it's a no DQ match. I just pulled this from Cage Match, but I don't think that really mattered. Or I guess it did actually. Come to think of it, I guess it's a no DQ match for the WWF title. Psycho Sid defending against The Undertaker. Who? Is this the worst WrestleMania main event of all time?
It's up there. It's really bad. Before we get to this main event, though, let's talk about Shawn Michaels, who came out there.
I'd rather not. No, please.
Yeah, Shawn comes out and he's just doing his little Shawn gyrations and like, and all that. And Vince McMahon says, look at Shawn Michaels. Oh, my dick. And like Shawn comes out and yeah, this is Sean in his Lost My Smile era. You know, he hasn't publicly embraced being a dick yet, even though he is one. And he's out there, and then Bret Hart comes out, and he basically just starts shooting on everybody, you know, and he's just like, you got Shawn Michaels out there with his little pussyfoot injury, and it's like, all right, okay, cool.
He tells Shawn to stay out of this match, but
And
one finger pointing at you, there's 4 pointing at me. You know what I'm saying?
and then Shawn Michaels is on commentary. He goes, "I'm so scared," but Vince McMahon is holding him back to not do anything, and it's like, it's very clear what's the actual interesting thing happening in the main event scene of the company right now. And it's not Sid and Taker. It's this sphere surrounding Bret Hart. It's Bret Hart and his descent into insanity. It's whatever's going to happen with Steve Austin. It's Shawn Michaels and his status and how that's going to be handled with him and Bret. That's what's interesting right now. It's not the actual main event that they booked with this, which is Sid and Taker. I took note of how Undertaker, he is not yet in the ministry aesthetic. Like, you know how like by the middle of this year, he has like the big kind of shoulder thing, like that like setup with like the kind of, it looks like
the cross. It's like tied in the middle kind of deal,
right.
Like Leather Daddy kind of thing. Yeah.
Here he still has kind of like the ripped sleeves, like the mid '90s Undertaker look.
So it was a callback to, I think, his first WrestleMania, because he had like the gray gauntlets and like you said, the ripped sleeve, and he comes out in the tie and everything. So he was like, it was an homage to his earlier iteration. Previous pay-per-views, he was more similar to like that ministry. He wasn't quite there, but like if you go watch the In Your House before this, he's more akin to like late '90s Undertaker.
That's what I was thinking, because I put this on and I was like, Taker still had this aesthetic at this time. Like in my head, I was like, no way. Yeah.
No, yeah, it was a little callback ski, I guess, which is just like Undertaker's just a fascinating, because his past few years at this point has been pretty dire. Outside of his like series with Mankind, which is awesome. I mean, just look at his WrestleManias, King Kong Bundy. The Diesel stuff was good. But like King Kong Bundy and like the Yokozuna deal and the Undertaker versus Undertaker, like he'd been that sideshow act for so long. So there's this bit of story here where it's like, oh, Undertaker's he's finally in the spot that he deserves. He's the workhorse. He's the staple of the company, which commentary was trying to push that forward. But I feel this match felt so last minute and everything got switched around. Yeah. There wasn't like a proper heat as a foundation for this feud, which I think ultimately is what made this match suffer.
It's just, they're trying really hard to like add weight to this, that like artificial weight that doesn't exist. Like you said, they try to really communicate that there's a man behind the gimmick for Undertaker, and the man is someone who's worked really hard and been in the company for a long time. Shawn Michaels was putting him over as a class act. This is totally and purely motivated by like to spite Bret Hart and be passive aggressive, because his commentary the whole time is just kind of like, I'm just being supportive, you know, and like he's saying things like, you know, like somebody's got to whatever, and like, you know, he'll be like, you know who's been shafted in this company? Undertaker, but he hasn't complained at all. He just kind of chugs along. Yeah. Like, it's a lot of that on commentary. And Vince co-signs it because Taker's his boy. Jim Ross co-signs it because he respects Taker. Again, it's a lot of like, it feels almost like this match is just the office going like, look, Mark, you've done a lot for us, and we're figuring this shit out. You can win this match and be our champion right now. But the truth is, there's a reason why Undertaker was never a long-term title holder in the company. That was just never the right role for him in WWE. And they're just doing it for security and safe and like just for like security purposes. But the fact of the matter is, this was a very slapdash last second main event, like you said. And the fans, like, it feels like they want to get into it at the beginning because Sid is cool. And I love Sid. God rest his soul. His match with Shawn Michaels in MSG at Survivor Series was awesome. Yeah. But he's not a guy that can lead a match. And he needs to be in there with someone that creates the motion for him, that allows him to just kind of like shut you down with a big boot or a choke slam or a clothesline or something. Right. And then he can fill in with just kind of like his Sidness, you know. But here you have him who's not a ring general, with Undertaker, who also isn't a ring general. He's a mobile big man. He is capable, but he's not a ring general. and they have a very listless and way too long match. And if you're gonna run this, there needed to be tighter agent thing where they can come up with like different creative ideas to keep it exciting.
Right.
But there wasn't any. Like this was very bereft of like dynamic ideas, and it also went way too long. There is an interminably long bear hug spot from Sid.
Where do you stand on bear hugs?
Fuck him. It just like he does it here, and it's like, man, this thing is long. And then Taker's fighting out of it, and the crowd is trying to will him on. And then Sid re-cinches it in, and they're like, fuck this. I'm not. Like the crowd goes, you can feel the crowd going, we're not gonna like get into this again. Like just do your spot. So there's that, and like there's just some like kind of bad brawling on the outside, and it's just not very interesting at all. And it's a shame. It's a shame this show is ending on such a flat note. The Bret Hart interference with the chair, if anything, is like
the most interesting part of it.
Yeah, because again, like I said, like the straw that stirs the drink right now in the WWF main event scene is Bret. And he's a point of interest. And so it's almost like, all right, let's further the Bret story here. Let's get him back involved. And it's like, again, it's just like the actual direct wrestling from the main two people, there was just nothing there. There's nothing there. This match like didn't even threaten to get good at any point. It was just kind of long and like it existed, and it was like, this is just way too long, unfortunately. And it's a shame because, like I said, I've seen both of these guys in this era have good wrestling matches, and it's with great wrestlers, of course. Undertaker worked Shawn Michaels later this year, and it was great, obviously.
All-time Hell in a Cell match, and the matches with Mankind, and like
Sid was great with Shawn.
Sid was hot. Everybody loved Sid. The fire in this guy was crazy.
Absolutely.
It's just like it's unclear if Sid is a heel here, which is my thing. And I think that's a big thing that made this match suffer, among other things. That Sid didn't really commit to being a heel. There was no heat. There's no like even little things like posing or jawing with the crowd or jawing at Taker in between moves. There was just nothing there. It was just, here's a move. Let me walk around, look stoic for a little bit. Here's another move. Here's a bear hug. And like I wanted to like this match because visually it's such a cool, like they face off. You got Sid, who's just a hilarious cartoon character. You got Undertaker, who's pretty much just as tall and just a presence of his own. But then that damn bell rings, and it's just like you said, there's just no energy. There's no emotion. It's a last minute slap together thing with no build. There's no emotional investment in either guy really at this point. Sid I don't know if Sid's cooled off at this point, but he's past his peak, I would say, in terms of like crowd engagement. He was really rolling a couple months prior. And I think some of the like, again, like his reign just, it was ill-fated. A lot of that kind of like wackiness in the early part of 97 with the title scene kind of flipping around and the Final Four and like the mixing around and Shawn Michaels and Bret getting canceled, because we should inform the audience that that was supposed to be the match, Shawn and Bret rematch, which, man, I think they probably would have torn the house down. Just a regular wrestling match between those two guys in the stage that they were in 97, where Bret, now there would have been like actual heat and hatred behind it, and they wouldn't be forced to go an hour. They probably would have just had like a killer fucking 27-minute main event match. That would have been phenomenal. But yeah, a lot of the like clear, like creative, like disarray at the beginning of the year, if anybody was a victim from it, because Austin powered out and made it out of it. Bret Hart was better for it. Taker is just Taker. He's steady no matter what. If there was a victim of it, it would have been Sid. And his run fizzles from this point, and he's not there by the middle of the year. Crazy how far you can fucking from the Survivor Series a few months before this to just not be in there at all is just wild.
It's insane.
Completely different era we're approaching, but not a lot to this match. There's even boring chants during it, which during a WrestleMania main event is just wild.
Yeah, you don't want that.
We got a little announce table brawling, a little slam through the like French announce table, I think. Sid throws out a tombstone of his own, which is fun, I guess. Maybe it's just me trying to enjoy something about this match.
That was cool. The like tombstone reversal stuff, like that's fun. Yeah.
Right. The 69 into 96 counter. Yeah.
Right. I always enjoy that. For sure.
It looked pretty good, I guess.
Yeah. That was
fine.
good. Like there's like isolated moments that are kind of neat. It just doesn't come together to be a good match.
It's like these guys are good. That's like the frustrating thing. It's like these guys are good in their own ways. I just don't think this was the pair to bring that out of them.
It was poor matchmaking.
Yeah. What if you threw Shawn Michaels in here and made a triple threat?
I would say that it would turn it from a bad match to a passable match.
Or what, like Shawn Michaels wins, right? He's holding the title. Then Bret Hart comes out, and we have the WrestleMania 10 Owen coming out. Like, what the heck, man? But you have Bret Hart doing
like in '97, they haven't figured out how to do triple threat matches yet, really.
Yeah.
Shawn would creating the most. Here's the thing: this was like a half-star match. If I had to do star rating, if Shawn was in this match, he would move heaven and earth, and this would be like a 3.25. And he'd probably try a couple really ambitious high spots and dives and things like that. And maybe there'd be moments where all right, you know what? Actually, the more I think about it, you could do the thing where Bret does the interference and kind of brawls off off to the side with Sid, and you could get some straight up Shawn Taker stuff. Sid can come back in because that way you save Sid because Sid is limited. So it's like instead of having to have him do heat segments and comebacks and this and that, you can just pop in for the big stuff, fight off with Bret for like a lot of the other parts, and then Shawn can handle the meat of this thing, just being Shawn Michaels and Undertaker. So actually, the more I think about it, you could structure this to where it's mainly a Shawn Taker match with like Sid interruptions and Sid big moves, and then again you get the finish, and then Bret Hart's on the stage, just like, man, what the fuck? You actually could have had a good main event here,
and it wouldn't have been worse.
Right. No, definitely not worse. Very few main events in WrestleMania history are worse. But yeah, like, you know what? You do that, and the entire tenor of this show changes. I think this show is looked at differently.
I would say, it's unfortunately the last thing you see. So it's the thing you remember about the show. And it's like, there's a lot of good stuff on the show, but ultimately it's Bret that really makes the splash in this match. He comes back towards the end, interrupts a Sid powerbomb on Taker, distracts Sid, and this allows Taker to hit the tombstone for the win. Which is another thing. Is like, why does Taker need to like have a non-clean win? Like, I don't know.
It's weird. Yeah.
It's weird, but Taker wins. We get that pretty like iconic shot of him holding the title because he didn't hold world titles that much. So, Taker's like you said, Taker's Taker. He's always a guy you can go to, and I guess all things considered was the right decision with this one, but weird flat note to end this show. That's for sure. But yeah, man, that brings WrestleMania 13 to a close. If you had to grade this show on a scale to 100, what do you think you would throw at it?
65 to 70.
Okay.
65 to 70.
I think Bret and Austin is alone like amps it up a lot.
That's like 55 of the points here.
Yeah. I mean, it was like, honestly, like watching the show, like I had a good time watching it. Like outside of the main event, like,
yeah, I'm not like miserable watching this show.
Right.
It's a very watchable show, partially because for me, I'm not one of those guys that all I need is match quality. Like I can get into a show for other reasons, the vibe, or just like rediscovering a time period and like getting a kick out of that. Like I said, like just kind of like observing like various aspects of just like the style and like the fans and where things were going. So I always like going back and watching old wrestling from different time periods for that reason. But yeah, like I think the show was like it has a reputation of just being like an awful show with one good match. And again, it's like I wouldn't really even fight back that there's like one particularly strong match. But what I would say is that even with that being the case, it's not an awful viewing experience until the main event. And there's a couple little things here and there like that can kind of pop you. So I think it's fascinating as a snapshot to a WWF that's rapidly in change at the moment. And it's a show that, listen, if a show is going to be a one match show, that one match here was special. It was seminal.
Right.
It was very, very key. So a hell of a one match to carry a show.
And you're talking about the Godwins, of course.
Yeah,
we all know this.
Talking about the four-way tag match.
Sweet. But yeah, I totally agree. It's definitely, a passable with one great thing. So it's not a bad show. Can't say it's a bad show, but another show that is not a bad show. It's a great show. It's a great account. It's a great brand. The Wrestle Purists, of which you are a part of. Appreciate you, Ibou, making the time to check out the show.
Yeah,
Come on here, talk about it. Where can everybody find your beautiful face, listen to your beautiful voice, and taste your beautiful chest?
Well, no one can chase my beautiful chest unless you want to pay me like $1,000 to do that.
Yeah, we can talk offline.
Right. But Wrestle Purist, I'm on every Monday, Wrestle Purist Worldwide at 6 p.m. Wrestle Purist channel. We talk about the weekend's action, typically, SmackDown, Collision, whatever's happening overseas, if it's anything big, so you can always find me on Wrestle Purist Worldwide. And beyond that, I review Monday Night Raw every Tuesday. Raw reviews with my co-host Rob, and we talk about Raw at 2:30 every Tuesday afternoon. We have a lot of fun. We barely review Raw itself. We just kind of read super chats and pop each other and just laugh at stuff. And then at the end, we're like, yeah, Raw was cool. And then we get out of there.
Right.
But yeah, you guys can find me there. You can follow me at Backup Hangman on Twitter. And I'm also on Blue Sky Social. So you can find me there. Also, same name, Backup Hangman. And yeah, man, you can. Those are the places to find me. I'll usually be giving my silly little wrestling takes. And again, I'm really appreciative of the opportunity on this show, and I'm happy you had me on, Kyle. I had a lot of fun.
I appreciate you coming.
Absolutely, man. Anytime, genuinely, anytime. You paid me very handsomely for this, guys. For those who don't know,
man,
he paid me like
briefcase of money.
Yeah, $500 to do this, and I was really appreciative of that. And yeah, man. Anytime you want me on the apron bump, just let me know, and I'll be down to do it if I can.
Lots of sexual favors were done to get this to happen, but I do it for you folks.
Absolutely.
I do it for you.
Yeah.
Hey, if Triple H had a post show scrum of this show of WrestleMania 13, what do you think he would say about it?
Wow, I mean, what we just did tonight. I mean, these guys blew the roof off the place. I mean, Undertaker and Sid, what these guys just did out there. This is why we are a global brand. I can't say enough about what those guys did in their effort out there. This was the largest grossing PLE in Chicago. This was the most attended premium live event in Chicago, Illinois. We were broadcasted in numerous countries, most countries ever. Our visibility is off the charts. I had a good talk with Nick Khan. We will be in Chicago again for another premium live event next year. We're just on fire right now.
What we do here?
What we do. What we do.
I can't.
Some guy like, hey Hunter, dickhead from fuckface.com. Bret Hart and Austin. Can you talk to me about that match and what it meant to you?
I mean, wow. What we do out there, it's more than just wrestling, It's the stories we tell. It's the emotion, the magic we bring.
Like, that would be the scrum.
All right, enough, Paul. Once again, thank you to Ibou for joining the program today. Great time with old Ebes. Go check out Ibou wherever you listen to podcasts, YouTube, wherever you find Wrestle Purists and Fightful. He's all over the place. He's on X. He's on Blue Sky. He's on Tout. I think he's the only guy there, but he's there. So check him out. Yeah. Hey, you know what we gotta do is hit that goddamn jingle, Bartholomew. WCW, ECW, WWF, who's the hardest promotion? Eric or Vince or Paulie? I think we can agree, though. Heck, Myers is the shit. Alrighty then. The hardest promotion battle of 1997 continues, gang. We're here. So if you're watching on YouTube, I'll be sharing my screen so you can follow along visually if you'd like. If you're listening in audio land, I'll walk you through it with my buttery, velvety voice. So basically what we have here is a scoreboard. We got the overall section, which is like best pay-per-views, TV, in-ring, out-of-ring, just all the general criteria. And each company, if they earn this criteria, they get points. We also have the best and the worst in terms of matches, wrestlers, characters, segments, what have you. Positive points if you're the best, negative points if you're the worst, et cetera, et cetera. We'll walk through it. But overall, right now, as it stands, before WrestleMania 13, ECW is in the lead with 40 points, WCW with 21 points, and the World Wrestling Federation with a -3 points. Yeesh. But I have a feeling the WWF might make a bit of a comeback here. So we'll see. We'll see, though. We won't get too ahead of ourselves. First thing we got to do for this is grade the show from a scale of 0 to 100. So I posed this to Ibou. I think he said like 65 or 70. It's definitely at least that. So looking at the other shows that I've covered this year, we just gave Uncensored a 78. Looking at WWF In Your House Final Four, got a 60. Royal Rumble 97, got a 58. So it's definitely the best WWF show of the year for sure. So definitely better than Final Four, which got a 60. So 60 is the floor. I'm looking at Super Brawl and Uncensored. Got 81 and 78 respectively. So Bret and Austin, because let's be honest, that's what's carrying this show on its back. Bret and Austin is going to be the match of the year. Spoiler alert. And it's better than anything that any of these shows gave us. Everything else was pretty passable, and even the main event, the last thing you see, was pretty bad, though. So I'm thinking somewhere low 70s, maybe high 60s for this show, for WrestleMania 13. I'm thinking maybe high 60s. 70s, low 70s. I'm going to say 71. Let me type out 71 and see how that tastes in my mouth. So a little better than CyberSlam. Better than Crossing the Line from ECW. I'm going to say 73. I think most of the show was pleasant to watch. Even stuff that may be forgettable in hindsight. I thought it was a well-produced show outside of the main event. And even the main event had some fun interjections from like Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels and stuff like that. So I think 73 is fair. So what we do now is refresh this. Scroll up to the top and we see which company has the highest average grade so far as of this point in 97. As of right now, ECW is still in the lead with an average grade of 71. Therefore, they earn these 15 points, or they maintain them because they already had them. So no change to the score as of yet. So now we move on to the best TV product. So just general best TV. We're tracking WCW as the best right now. Nitro is a fun watch. It's a very unpredictable show. It flows well. You got the cruiserweight actions. You also got the main storylines, different plot pivots, at least one or two like major storyline kind of things that like drive stories that are worth watching and worth getting invested in per show, at least on Nitros. Raw is still not very good. Raw is not great. ECW is still about the same. Right now, they're gearing up towards Barely Legal. So it's almost like an afterthought at this point. So I think WCW maintains these 15 points for best TV. Best in ring. So we're tracking ECW as the best right now. So the mentality of ECW as of this point is that from top to bottom, it's the most well-rounded for what ECW is looking to give, right? ECW has a different style, but they do that style well. WWF has good in-ring. I mean, obviously with Bret and Austin, but even like Triple H and Goldust's, like, I don't know, man. There's just not. There's like 5 guys that are great. Everything else is just very paint by numbers is the thing. ECW matches are more innovative. It's not all just blood and barbed wire and semen. Like it's innovative stuff, weapons or not, emotion. I think just across the board, ECW is still the best as of right now. So we're gonna keep ECW. ECW maintains these 10 points for best in ring. Plus, they're starting to introduce the luchadors a little bit in ECW at this point, so which is something that's been sorely missed for a while. So yeah, ECW keeps those 10 points. Best out of ring. We're tracking ECW as the best right now. It's not WWF. Bret and Shawn is awesome. Anything Steve Austin is awesome. That's pretty much it. WCW's got the NWO. It's good. But ECW, similar to the in-ring mentality, ECW just got way more, the promos, the storylines, the variety of characters. I think ECW just has a better package as of this moment. So ECW maintains those 10 points. Match of the year. So now we're moving to the best section. So the first best is best match of the year so far. I mean, what are we doing? We all know. Versus Steve Austin, WrestleMania 13. All right. We're not even going to dilly-daddle. I'm not going to tease you. I'm not going to put a feather duster up to Uranus. We're going to just, it's Bret and Austin. We're not going to overthink it. So WWF takes those 5 points away from ECW. This was previously Eliminators versus RVD and Sabu. But yeah, Bret and Austin takes that one. So WWF is in the positive. Congrats. For now, at least. Best wrestler of the year. We're tracking DDP as the best. So it's been a constant struggle so far between DDP and Steve Austin. Right? DDP is great. We're approaching Spring Stampede 97 where he's in the main event. So might have something to say at that point, but as of right now, Stone Cold. I was on the fence beforehand, but after Bret and Austin, after the submission match, it's Stone Cold. Stone Cold, best wrestler of the year so far as of this date. So WWF takes those 5 points away from WCW. See, we're working our way back up, WWF. We're doing it. Best character / storyline. We're tracking Sting as the best. Bret Hart's a very interesting character. We talked about it a lot in the podcast, how his mentality hasn't really changed, but the bitterness that has arisen in him has been very organic, and I think it's played out pretty well. It was a big part of why Austin and Bret was so good, the match here at WrestleMania. So Bret Hart is definitely in the running. But is he better than Sting? Sting, who just turned on the NWO. Well, not turned, but you know what I mean. He just basically said, fuck you, NWO. The crowd's constantly chanting for Sting like he's red hot. Bret Hart's hot in the opposite direction, I guess, though. This is a tough one. It's definitely between those two. Bret and Sting. Steve Austin's a great character, but I think he's just less dynamic than the other two right now. In my opinion. Or is he? I don't know. I guess Steve should be in the running for this. My gut wants to keep it at Sting for now. Just because he's doing so much without even saying anything. He's the hottest thing going in the company right now, probably. I'm going to leave it at Sting. We're going to leave it at Sting for now. So WCW keeps those 5 points. Best segment of the year so far. We're tracking DDP giving the Diamond Cutter to Scott Hall on Nitro, which pretty much launched DDP's career, hence why it's the best segment of the year so far. Nothing on WrestleMania, I don't think, would overtake it. Nothing that WWF has done. Even like the ECW invasion, like it was cool, but like I don't know, it didn't really leave a lasting impression. You know what I mean? I feel like this is WCW either way. Part of me wants to go back and change this to where when Sting repelled from the ceiling at the end of Uncensored. But I'm not going to. Diamond Cutter to Scott Hall, I think, is still pretty sick. Has ECW done anything interesting so far? We're not at Barely Legal yet. Trying to think. Feel free, by the way, if you're listening to this and you're like, hardest part of the ring, you're forgetting this, or I disagree with you for this reason, shoot me a DM, join the Discord, let's talk about it. I'm willing to hear you out. Leave a comment on Spotify. That's a thing you can do now. Or YouTube, etc. You know what I'm saying. We're gonna leave it as the Diamond Cutter to Scott Hall, just because it was so hype and just what came after it was so sick. So WCW maintains those 5 points. So now we move on to the worst. The worst match of the year. We're tracking Buff Bagwell versus Scotty Riggs strap match at Uncensored as the worst. Was Sid and Undertaker worse? Yes. Let's think about it. Hold on. Let's think about it. So Undertaker and Sid obviously had higher stakes and a higher spotlight. It's about as bright of a spotlight as you can get, and they shit the bed. Buff Bagwell and Scotty Riggs was a terrible match, but it was just thrown in the middle of a show. So that's something we got to consider. You know what? It's fucking Taker and Sid. Undertaker versus Sid. WrestleMania 13. So WrestleMania 13 gave us both the best match of the year so far and the worst. Incredible. So WWF takes those -3 points away from WCW. Worst wrestler of the year. We are tracking Crush. Worst wrestler of the year. I'm telling you what, Undertaker has a case. That's going to make a lot of people mad, but there's a case for Undertaker as the worst of the year right now. The Royal Rumble. What did he do at the Rumble? I don't even fucking remember. Did he face Farouk at the Rumble? I think he did, right? I could be totally wrong. I'm not going to look. I could look it up, but I'm not going to. But this hasn't been good, man. I don't know. Crush is bad still, but he's kind of like just bad within a faction, so he's hidden. You know what I mean? He doesn't need to be great. Who else? Who else on this show? The Godwins. No, not Goldust. Not Vader, not Bulldog, not Owen. Do I go under? I mean, it's going to be WWF either way. Undertaker has... Well, even this year, though, he hasn't really had interesting storylines either, dude. The Mankind thing is on the back burner for now. I know after Mania, that kicks back into gear a little bit, so maybe he makes a better case for himself. But as of right now, he's just kind of there, and he's getting all these opportunities, and he's just drinking a warm cup of semen every time he gets in that ring. So, yep, we're going Undertaker, worst wrestler of the year. So, WWF maintains those -3 points. Worst character / storyline. We're tracking the whole Nick Patrick, Randy Anderson debacle in WCW. The two refs, they had a match. Randy got fired. Brought his family. He's like, I have cancer, don't fire me. And Bischoff's like, nah, fuck you, doggy. But then he gets brought back. But then Nick Patrick's still wearing sunglasses. So there's a lot going on here. Is there a worse segment here? I'm trying to think. Has WWF put out any stinkers of segments? Now I'm thinking about it. So first of all, no, I think so. Worst character storyline. I think WCW holds on to that. WCW also holds on to worst segment of the year with Miss NWO from Sold Out. But going back up to the best segment here, I just had a thought. What the Bret Hart worked shoot in the steel cage was pretty sweet. And it kind of spearheaded this whole character direction for Bret. Does that earn the best segment of the year so far? It was very cutting edge. Very, very tawdry language. Bret in the cage. Bret shoot or DDP Diamond Cutter to Scott Hall. We're gonna leave it. We're just gonna leave it. So that's where we're at. That's where we're at for now. We might come back to it in a later episode. But as of right now, the score, the updated score. ECW with 35 points, WCW with 19, WWF with 4. The WWF is making a bit of a comeback here. Still got a lot of work to do, but there's a lot of year left, roughly 3/4 of this year left. So fun stuff. Fun stuff. I like it. Well, that's about it. That's about all Daddy has for you guys today. Appreciate you guys tuning in. If you haven't already, hit subscribe, leave a comment, thumbs up, thumbs in my belly button, rate, review, like, love, give me a hug, give me a poke. We're still poking people. That's the whole thing anywhere. Do all that. It's much appreciated. And I appreciate you for joining me today. Let me tickle your chin a little bit. All right, get out of here. Get out of here. Love you guys. Big ol' smooches all over your face. I'm hard.
Yeah. And the hardest, talk around and disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what hard is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can knock it. Let's get it started. It's the hardest, talk around and disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what hard is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can knock it. Let's get it started.